Cedar Rapids.
Kind of watching Facebook too to see if.
Mayor, get out there, do some push-ups, show everybody.
That may take considerably longer.
Literally 7 minutes.
Give us 20.
We fly over it.
Because that's south.
Yes, like 2.5.
Oh, God.
3 hours from Orlando. 2 hours south of Tampa. It's like 20 minutes north of Fort Myers.
So
I just think it's so, that's why I don't like to have to do that. So it just acts dumb.
Like I said, they should have like a pause on the recording. It'd be way easier.
Right, that you could stop it and then restart it, but I don't think that, I can ask that dude, maybe it is on there. Still not saying anything?
Not yet.
I feel like it has a bad timer. Because 1 minute always seems like longer than 1 minute.
feature. Like this feature, like that feature.
I know.
So his daughter was around that.
Yeah, well, we were on the flight this last summer.
Around that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what clock it uses.
I think that was.
That's the other thing.
This summer, Steph and I were on their flight. No, we weren't, because we were waiting for
Oh
luggage.
no, it was probably.
That's what that dang PDF thing
Yeah,
does.
then they must have gone down.
It like attacks my PDF. I tell Chantal like it's.
Okay, we're good.
So we need to.
We were on the
return to
flight,
open
yeah, because I
session.
You
was
can just
talking
announce
to them
that.
at the baggage pickup.
Yeah, just announce that we went back.
Yeah, so they go down there.
Now we're in open.
We are now in open session. No action is anticipated. I need a motion.
We already did the motion.
Okay, we
So we're
did.
good.
Gotcha.
We are in open.
Number 9, consent agenda, minutes, City Council 1/22/24 and 2/1/24, Library Board 2/5/24, February 12th, 2024 claims, and January 2024 financial reports. Is there any question on the consent agenda?
I had one. I'm trying to find the page. There's a charge for a boat trailer purchase on page 17. Is that for fire?
No.
It's for the fencing for events.
So we have all that yellow fencing that we bought, and it was incredibly difficult to transport around town to the various corners. So the guys were able to find a used boat trailer for $200, and then there would have been some miscellaneous, like steel that they bought, and then they welded it on. I'll email you guys a picture, but it's pretty awesome. You can fit 60 pieces of fence on the trailer, and then they mounted like 2 posts on it, so all the cones go with it, so they can literally just drive around with the fencing.
I love that. Wow. good
Yeah,
for
they were
them.
pretty proud. I said, we're gonna have a parade, and then I ran like an errand or something, and I came back, and the parade was happening while I was gone. They had it out there, everybody was standing out there looking at it. It was a good job on the part of Public Works, so.
It looks good.
Yeah, guys.
If there's no other questions, I need a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion by Gale,
I'll
Sec-
second by Roush. Roll call.
All
Or-
ayes.
No
That's
roll call.
great.
You're on.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. Number 10, consideration of resolution number 15-24, Highway 136 reconstruction bids for Midwest Concrete Incorporated in the amount of $1,654,872.30.
So it's in your packet, that there were 8 bids. We had the one packet that or on the one page, we put the top 3 bids, so you could actually read it a little bit better, and then the other one has all 8. So Midwest has had good experience with us. I think they may have done Garfield, when you guys redid Garfield, so we have some experience with them here. Is that right?
I think so.
So we will have a pre-construction meeting soon. Still don't have an answer on like which parts they'll do first or second. Any questions?
What's the city's portion of the project?
So it was originally going to be around, let me think now. So 175, so I'm looking at that we would still borrow $600,000. Which is a little bit less than if it would have been like in the high 800s before. So 138 of it was credited, like based on the MSA estimate. And then because it was cheaper, obviously we didn't all, like our side wasn't the cheaper, all of it. So we had them break it down. So it was like 200 and low 200 numbers, I think around 211. And then we were 138. So the 211 was the amount that came off the line items that the state's paying for, and then 138 for our portion. So then remember, we're also getting the 120 from the county that goes towards stormwater. And then the other Kathy and I kind of looked at, like, everything that we've paid so far towards engineering is basically the ARPA money that we got. So you remember, we got like 175 towards this project. So if we take what we've spent from the ARPA fund, that's basically paid for what we have already spent. And then when you take our portion minus the 120 for storm, when we come back next meeting to set a hearing for that, how much we're gonna borrow, it should be around 600 for this project. Which, remember, we were talking 8 or 9 that we would have to borrow. So we should be good at a lower amount.
Yeah.
But of the official from MSA, it was 138.
But we do all the, am I right? We do all the engineering fees up front.
That's part of
And then
the,
we get compensated back. correctly?
we get paid for a portion of the engineering, but what we don't get paid for is the inspections. So the next agenda item, I'll be asking you to table, because we don't have an amount for how much it's gonna be, but part of the locally letting it, remember how a lot of times state projects can be let out by the state? Well, you end up paying more for the overall project just because of the parameters that the state sets. But you don't end up, you share in the cost of the daily inspections. When you locally let it, you pay for all of that, but in the end, we will save more by not having it be a state bid project, even though we pay 100% for those inspections. The state knew we were meeting today, but they didn't get an answer back to Jake for how much that'll be on the next agenda item.
Anything else? If nothing, I need a motion on resolution number 15-24.
I'll make a motion, resolution 15-24.
Motion by Oliphant,
Second.
second by Hush, roll call.
Delaney,
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
And we're tabling 11.
Can I add one more thing?
Gotcha.
Kind of related to your question, Bill. In Jake's communication with the state, I did make sure, they're gonna ask them, but on another project that they locally let, the city was allowed to make a draw and bill the state on a monthly basis. So I'm having them confirm that, but obviously, we'll wanna do that if we're allowed to do that. So we'll be like, whatever the bill is that we're gonna pay, you're always gonna have to pay the whole bill. And then our goal is if they say that's okay, that every month, then we'll try to get money back from the state. So we're really not out for a very long-term amount of time.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we will technically pay for the 2 million or the 1.7 to them ahead of time, and then be getting it back from the state for the state's portion. So we have to be able to cash flow that, which is why if we can bill them monthly, that will be advantageous from keeping a cash flow. So that's our goal.
We're tabling 11.
Yes, please.
Okay. I need a motion on that.
You can just pass. We'll bring it back.
Number 12, consideration of resolution number 13-24, setting a public hearing for the property tax levy on April 8th.
So part of the new budget process is, we used to have what they called the max levy hearing. This somewhat replaces it, but there's a few stricter guidelines. One is it has to be its own meeting. There can be nothing else on the agenda that's the public hearing takes place. And they even got to the point of saying that you have to have a 30-minute gap between the meeting, that's the public hearing time start, and your regular meeting. So that will be the point where, and the new thing that'll also happen is by March 5th, we owe the county the amount that we intend to levy. So we'll kind of finalize what we're at least going to put in the notice in 2 weeks. And then March 5th, Kathy sends it to the 2 counties. They're then obligated by March 20th or 25th, I think it is, to send a letter to every property owner within the 2 counties that says your city, Cascade's going to have a meeting on April 8th, and this is what the proposed taxes are. And then after that, you have that hearing, and then at the end of April or at our next second meeting, which would be the 22nd, we would have our hearing that you're used to having for those of you that have been on here before with the budget, adopt the budget, and then it's now permanently due April 30th. So all this is doing is setting that we'll put the notice in the paper, and then in 2 weeks, we'll set what you're gonna put in that notice, and then this will be the hearing, not till April.
Gotcha. I need a motion on resolution number 13-24.
Make a motion on resolution 13.
Motion by Gale,
I'll second.
second by Delaney, roll call.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Number 13, consideration of ordinance number 3-24, garbage and recycling fees for 2024.
So I tried to explain kind of, there's sort of three phases to this garbage discussion. The first one is ordinance 03-24, which is the more imminent of them, that our garbage rates were supposed to go up December 1. They didn't go up until January 1 based on Republic's billing. And the commercial, in our contract, it was not clear to me. I've never worked in a community where we had commercial garbage. And so, in everything that we always do is monthly. So when I was here a year ago suggesting that you raise rates for residential, you'll recall that I said, we don't need to raise them for commercial. And so that really, we were fine for the last year in that regard, but it's because the way it's worded in the contract with them, it says monthly, but it's actually weekly. And so I always thought like, oh gosh, that seems kind of high, but we won't raise it. So because of that, I think that my recommendation for tonight is that we need to raise the rates just to be able to cover that. We also, as you know, allow people to have the spring and fall cleanup, which is an additional cost to the city. We get billed somewhere between, I think it's $2,000 to $3,000 a time. So we want to factor that into people's garbage rates, that although you're not paying that on your monthly, that you have the opportunity to do that. And then when we get to the budget, the other recommendation is that there's 50 cents on each bill. 50 cents per bill per month would cover the cost of what we pay to the utility for billing, so that instead of taking that out of the tax dollars, which the state is starting to limit and look at how you grow and the limitations that you have, 50 cents of the recommended on the residential side would be for the actual cost that residential is going up on the contract that we're paying to Republic, and then the other 50 cents would be a means to have garbage users paying for the full cost of garbage, as opposed to tax dollars going for the cost of them billing it at CMU, and then that they're only paying for the actual garbage disposal. So, and then the dumpster fees also are proposed to be increased. So you can see on there, it would be $1 for residential. And then we also learned that when the city was still doing commercial garbage or doing garbage, we had 1 and 1.5 yard dumpsters. Those are no longer and haven't been for a long time. So the smallest that Republic gives you is a 2 yard. So that's why those two line items are taken off. There's also no 5 yard dumpsters, and so the recommended amounts increasing are 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8. And then the clarity of that on some of the other items in your packet on page 46, 47. First of all, recycling, we are still high enough that I'm not recommending any change. You'll recall it's garbage and recycling is a separate line item on the bill. So we're not recommending recycling going up. If you look at like the bottom of page 46, it used to say the city will charge $10 for an extra toter, and then it said before that there's a $20 per extra toter charge for delivery. So that's always in practice been 10 plus 10, not 10 plus 20. But the way I always read it and the way that it was worded, I thought you were paying 10 for the toter and 20 for us to deliver it, which we never did that because that's everybody said. But since we're in this ordinance anyway, I made it clear that it's an additional $10 for the tote, and that's both in the recycling and garbage. There was stuff in here before that talked about the limits of how much you can have, and it was 33-gallon bags were referenced, or 33-gallon containers. That's not on there anymore. We make it clear in the top of page 47 that there can potentially be extra charges if you have a dumpster, technically a toter as well, but I don't think this happens with toters. But there's a camera on the front of the garbage trucks, and if someone has a dumpster that's heaping full or stuff next to the dumpsters, we're being charged for that, and so it says an overage fee, because it's intended on these rates to basically be a fairly flat, closed dumpster. Like if it's poking up a little bit, it's not a big deal. But if you're doubling the size of the garbage that you're giving them, there's a charge. So we make that clear in the top of page 47. We keep the $2 per bag. Hardly anybody does that throughout the year, but if someone on the residential side has extra garbage, you can come and buy those $2 stickers, and then they can set the bag next to it with a sticker on it. So we leave that in there.
Are they fine with that,
Yep,
with
the garbage company.
the automatic, or with the toter?
Yeah,
automatic
it happens so
guys, you know?
rarely, yeah. I mean, I can say, I think, maybe in my time here, minus of course, like when people come in for the e-waste pickup, maybe 6 times in 2 years that anybody's come in and bought them, so.
I just didn't know if it was all right with the,
Yeah, it's still in our contract that they do that. So there's that. And then lastly, There was still a reference to those little green rectangle recycling bins, and they were like $5, remember, before the toters for recycling that had like a cover? Like, I got rid of those because you can't use those anymore. So it was mostly cleanup, but those are the rates. And because those rates are being charged to the city now, my recommendation, as I posted it on the agenda, would be to skip the readings and implement that tonight. If you do implement that tonight, then it'll go on the utility bill in time for the ones that'll get mailed on February 20-something, and then would be due in March.
Any questions?
So I don't know if you want to vote on this one, or you want to talk about all three garbage things and then come back to voting.
We could do that.
Are their bills very specific? Like, so we have the extra fee if things are heaped over top, like all that?
So it's spelled out, but no one understood that that was on there. So that kind of gets to the third of our items. So when you look at the bill, number one, like, it's all getting cleaned up right now. But it said like Terry's Barber Shop. I was like, well, I know Terry. I know he used to be the barber, but I don't know where that was. So that's like Cheryl's. Or the Cornerstone Church said McLaughlin's on the Republic bill, because no one's ever like updated them on the name. So we're going through the process of that so that it'll be easier to compare the two. But then I think that we were paying the bill and those overages were never getting sent over. You know, it's been going on for 10 years probably almost that you've had Republic. So my guess is that that was never happening. But yes, it's easy to read once you know what it means. It's like there's two lines really close to each other because usually they're far apart for each customer. And then when it's right next to it, you can see it's overage, so it sticks out. We looked at the bill that we're paying tonight, there's 2 people. So we're talking, and maybe on some of the ones that we've looked at through this kind of audit process, maybe there's 4 on a few bills. But then basically Kathy would get the bill and then give that to Chantel, and then she would basically have to interrupt normal billing for garbage, go in and manually enter that somebody's shop had an overage on there. So this is making it clear. I think, you know, again, it wasn't listed clearly for dumpster fees that if there is an overage, like, we certainly as the city should not be eating that.
Any
So do you want to
questions?
keep going, do you want to vote on this one, or do you want to talk about all 3 things first?
Can we bundle them all?
I just have a quick question. My understanding of the difference in price for commercial versus residential
Yep.
is that when we talked to them, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, that your commercial was allowed a second tote. That's what
I've never heard that.
the person said when we were talking to them. From
Yeah, I wouldn't
otherwise, why
think
do you
so.
have, why do you have 2 different fees?
Yeah, I don't know. It's in our contract that we signed that a commercial toter is $14. A residential toter is 10-something and change. I think it's $14.04 and $10.50 something. And I know it's per toter.
I was the one to ask the question, and the person.
Yeah, I believe you. I just,
Person from the
it's Matt.
Republic sat there and said, well, because at one time, commercial was picked up twice a week. Back 10 years ago or so,
Yeah.
when the city did it, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it's
say
like-
anything like that in the contract, so.
Okay. But we-
And I know that if you have 2 toters, you pay 14 times 2.
That's not what Republic said 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
just saying
why are
what
we
the,
charging $15 versus 10 or 11?
well, they charge us 14, so I'm not sure. I can try to get a hold of them. I didn't know you had that question, so. So do we want to vote on these, so at least we get the higher ones, and then if there is some correction to that, or, I just know that I don't see anything that's worded that way. Everything for totes, like, there's clearly in our contract, as there has been in the ordinance.
Okay, I mean, I'm just saying, the individual from Republic was here, and that question was asked, and that's what he stated. That there was a reason for commercial being 50% higher. You can clarify it, I guess. in the
I
meantime.
can try.
Yep.
Are we okay proceeding
Because
then?
they did used to, commercially, Republic used to pick them up twice.
Yeah,
a week.
Cascade did, and then.
Well, even
the
Republic
downtown.
did.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure,
downtown.
yeah.
I don't think so. Hmm.
They could have at one time, and then whenever we entered into our new contract, which would have been.
Yeah, was it us when it was the city doing it that way?
City to, all the commercial, like downtown here,
All the commercial accounts.
would be picked up on both days. And then, Mike, you remember,
Yeah, we used to pick up commercial, twice a week. And, but then the smaller businesses and still just once, depending on which side of town they were, where they might not have had a dumpster full or whatever,
yeah,
but it
Yeah.
was twice a week.
yeah. And then when they wanted to go with, then they just wanted to pick up once, so it was decided that you could have 2 totes. And that was the reason for the cost difference.
Yeah, I've definitely never heard that, but
Because we had it at the shop, Fred's shop, they did it twice a week, and it was Republic, because we would call, like, he would have to call, because they wouldn't come sometimes, and so he'd call Deanna.
yeah.
Well, just as long as it's clarified in the end.
There's no other questions. I need a motion on ordinance number 03-24.
So we have to do the 3 separate meetings motion first, Mayor, please.
Yep. I need a motion to, consideration of suspending the 3 separate meetings rule and adopting it one meeting.
I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 separate meetings rule and adopt at one meeting.
Motion by Roush,
Second.
second by Delaney. Roll call.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Number 13, consideration of ordinance number 03-24. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 03-24.
Motion by Roush,
Second.
second by Delaney. Roll call.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Number 14, consideration of ordinance number 04-24, refuse collections. This is the first of 3 readings.
So again, this is kind of cleanup stuff that I found in the garbage ordinance when going through this. So because it's not related to the fees and getting out on the utility bills, this makes it clear that previously we said that each person had to provide their own containers, which must have been when it was pre-Republic for garbage, when you had to provide your own. So we're eliminating that and making it clear that you must use the city's containers that we give you from the private hauler. It also requires everybody, as you know, we charge everybody. If you have water with us, you have to have garbage with us. And that there are some commercial people who have been with other companies, and that's not allowed by ordinance. So we're just, again, adding the language that says you're also required to use the hauler hired by the city for all containers and for your regular weekly pickups. You'll remember that we talked about this before with like R&R, that we wanted to make it clear that you could hire other haulers for like the temporary construction, renovation projects, special events, and that private hauler can only be used for temporary use. So that's in here. There was no reference to it having to be out at 7 a.m. And then as long as the toters have to be placed far enough apart because of the arms, I put that in there. And then we also, in the old ordinance, said that if you were a hauler that was not our garbage hauler, that you had to come in and get a permit that was approved by the city and issued by the clerk, but there was no process for that. So it basically would mean that like if R&R has any business in town, that they would just come in. I'm proposing $100. So it basically just pays for us to like know that they have insurance. They would provide that through the permit. We can ask like, how many trucks are you driving around? And the main thing is that you want to know like who's coming in and out, and if there were random people that were using different companies that, there's times where they can spill on the roads just like Republic does, and if we don't have any contact information for who's licensed, it's really just partly a semantics. So I added the sentence about that you have to have an annual fee for a hauler if you're not the one hired by the city, and that would be $100. So I don't know if there's any questions. That's page 49 and 50.
I have 2 questions. Can you refresh me why we decided that they have to use Republic?
Because that's the only way that you'll get the prices from Republic if your whole town is in the contract.
Okay.
And because if it was like, well, I just want to hire somebody else, now you have 2 garbage trucks going down streets, like down alleys, So basically, every city does that. If you're gonna contract, you, the city, are gonna contract with the company, you make it that that's who everybody has to go with, because they give you a price based on knowing that there's 1,000 houses, or, there's 1,000 accounts, I guess it is for us. So it might be 900 of them, and 150 of them are commercial. And so when they give you a price, it's based on, we know we have all the business, as opposed to 500 people decide to go elsewhere.
And then my second question is, like permit essentially, like is that normal
Yes.
for other communities to do?
Everywhere I've worked. Because basically, again, if you're taking garbage out of our community, like, we want to know that you're licensed to haul it, where you're hauling it, if there was ever a question. So it's just basically like, there would be a question like, you know, how many trucks do you have? Where are you authorized to take it to? Give us proof of your vehicles being insured. And they're just, it's, I think, really because of the massive size of them and the damage that they can do. That you don't want to just have like 3 garbage trucks driving around. And I have worked in one place where we had a council that thought it was unconstitutional to tell you who your garbage was. And let me tell you, the streets paid dearly. Because there was literally like, you know, one street and 3 toters here and 4 toters there for the different companies, and they're both up and down your road twice a week. It's terrible. You know, it's just hard, especially with us with alleys, so. And everybody paid more for that unconstitutionalness. Like, you know, people were like, it costs so much more. I'm like, because now they all come here for some amount of business, but not all of it, and it's just inefficient. So it is better for the taxpayers to go through one contract.
There's no other questions. I need a motion on ordinance number 04-24.
And this will be a first reading.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Motion by Delaney,
Second.
second by Hush. Roll call.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Yeah, aye.
Number 15, consideration of resolution number 20-24, fiscal year 24, commercial garbage back billing to July 1 of 2023.
So going through some things that happened over the last couple weeks in preparation for me coming before the council with the recommended garbage rates, I started looking, as I said, at that, realizing from my perspective, because I'd never had commercial garbage, having meetings with Matt Pivot from Republic, and realizing that I didn't understand how those were being charged, I started going through the bills more. You know, I always obviously approved the Republic bills, but I was never comparing that to what was happening. So Chantel provided me with a list of the 150 or so commercial accounts, and then I just kind of did like a quick sitting here one night audit and realized that there was some discrepancies between one of 2 things: either the size that we think you have on the billing system, that we bill the people, bill our customers, versus what the Republic bills said. Or, in the case of dumpsters, you can have it more than once a week. And so if the prices that you just adopted, which we made clear it is for 1 pickup a week, if somebody was getting 2 pickups a week, Chantel has the ability to then put units of 2, so you can have a 4-yard dumpster, and then you put the unit 2. But it didn't always match, again, with if Republic said 2, we might still have them at 1. We might have a toter when they have a 2-yard dumpster. And so as I started going through that, I recognized that there was some discrepancies, and they, without going back further, I'm certain that those errors in the amount that we were billing went further back than July 1. So there are probably some years that we have settled and ended and audited that there was some shortfall of cash into the city compared to what we were paying Republic. So what I believe and what I'm recommending that I think we need to do is, for those discrepancies for this fiscal year, to make ourselves whole. And so if we were billing them incorrectly, that we would go back to July 1. As I wrote it in there, if the amount is over $500, and I have it in front of me here, so it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's about 16 customers out of 150 where we were shortchanging the city. And the amount per month ranges from, a 20, some of them are only $10, $30, $40, $80. There's a potential for the one that's not resolved yet, because we need to have Matt come and drive around. That's our place that has the most dumpsters. There is a potential for theirs to be $5,000. The others collectively are $5,000. So if the original number for the one that's not resolved yet, it would be $10,000 that we've not billed for this fiscal year. And I think that, it's a significant impact to the budget. Obviously, we probably could go back further. I don't know that that's the right thing to do. But I do think that we could go back to July 1, and then in the proposal that I made, if it's those that are over 500, which is only like 2 or 3, they would have longer to pay. If it's less than that, they would just get it on one bill. So the ones that are like $100, $70. But there's one that's $560, one that's $840, and then potentially the one that's not resolved yet. So to me, that's kind of a fair compromise. Going back to July 1, trying to help this fiscal year, and it is what it is from prior to that. So and again, the ideal would be the sooner the better, so another bill doesn't go out incorrectly. For those, to make sure, just to give you some assurance, for any of them that we thought there was a discrepancy, instead of just saying, oh, like our bill says this and Republic says that, Matt Pivot was here, and I gave him a list of like 15 properties, and because I don't know what for sure 2, 4, 6, 8 yard looks like. So we gave him the list. He was sitting here, he had surgery, so his arm was harder for him to like be writing and driving and doing. So we wrote it together. He went to all 15 properties, confirmed the size of those dumpsters so that we weren't misbilling, or thinking we were misbilling and not. He confirmed all those sizes and then came back. And then Chantal had that information. So if we have to wait for the last one, hopefully we can get that done before the bills go out, which I think she emailed Matt today, so.
So what is the process if a company does change their toter size?
So that's kind of
How
what.
are you identifying, or how are you identifying?
Yeah, so we have, clearly, there's times where individual customer, A, B, C company calls Republic. Sometimes they call us. And so going forward, number one, we're requiring that Republic tell us. So that's one thing. And if anybody calls here, we can inform Republic, but we obviously have to know about it. And then there has to be making sure that Chantal gets that information, so she's changing the billing. And then we will have to go through those bills more with a fine tooth comb. It's a lot of information on there. It's probably like a 14-page bill, but that's why we're making sure that like the names get corrected on the Republic end, so it's easier to compare the lists. But
I just want to make sure that we're implementing something that's going to have a check and balance to make sure it's not happening
yes,
going forward.
so they know that they have to call us.
Right.
And that needs to be spelled out clearly. And sometimes it'll happen, like they make a change and then we have this big umbrella account, that's like the $25,000 bill. And then once in a while, Kathy will get a random like $80 bill because it's somebody that added a dumpster, but like somehow it doesn't get under our umbrella of the big bill. And so then we're like refusing to pay that one, and Kathy will just not pay it and tell Matt, like, you need to get this on our account. So we've made that clear. Obviously, we'll be spot checking it much more frequently. And then, of course, by the overage thing that you just approved, for us to be billing people those overages, like that in itself will force a tighter review of those bills. So yeah, once it gets fixed, we don't want to be back here having this conversation again.
Exactly.
If there's no other questions, I need a motion on resolution number 20-24.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 20-24.
Motion by Roush,
Second.
second by Hush, roll call.
Oliphant,
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale. Delaney.
Aye.
Number 16, consideration of resolution number 18-24, moratorium on corner fence permit issuance until Planning and Zoning Commission and council action.
So we talked about this last time, making sure that the council was agreeable to at least having the conversation about the visibility at intersections, or we call it the vision triangle. We have a meeting scheduled for February 20th. The ad will be in this week's paper. Obviously, had to make sure that we'd have a planning and zoning quorum. And when we're changing the zoning code, remember that the council has to have a public hearing in addition to planning and zoning, and then you can adopt that new ordinance. So from the last meeting when we discussed it, I did receive a permit for a corner fence. And before coming to you guys, wanted to check with legal counsel because I was uncomfortable saying, are we just kind of passing this one through because we don't have the change done? Or what are the appropriate measures that cities take when you've announced that you're in the process of looking at something from a public safety perspective and making those changes? And so their recommendation, as I explained, was that either I can simply not approve it until you get through this process, or they suggested that the council pass a moratorium. And I think some people do it for political reasons when you are doing it for a long term, but this is clearly like literally as legally fast as we can go. That we talked about it, I got the quorum, we had that, but it is in the area that we talked about before, and so it's a high visibility area. They're not gonna be able to put their fence up anyway until after the highway project is done, and so I know it's not a popular decision, obviously, with the person who is applying, but I feel uncomfortable saying that just because we didn't make our change yet, that we're not worried about the safety at that intersection, so.
Can I speak? I applied for a permit March 20th of last spring and talked to Lisa about it, and Lisa kind of talked me out of doing it because they were gonna have to rip my fence down. I made a check out, the city cashed it. About 3 days later, I decided, you know what, I don't wanna make extra work for whoever's doing this project to rip that fence up. So then last meeting, it brought up my piece of property, saying that I wanted to put a fence up. And now they want to do this vision triangle. If I do that, I might as well not put the fence up. It makes no sense. If you drive around 3/4 of the alleys around this town, there's a building or a fence sitting right next to the alley. I'm proposing sticking it 10 foot from the curb and 10 foot from the alley. If you put a post there and you walk and you drive out, you can easily see what's coming at you or going at you. Many of us lived in this city for quite a while, and you all know, I had bushes, hedges along the sidewalk and along the alley, right up to the alley, that were over 6 foot tall. I cut them down, I waited for the roots to die so I could put up a fence. Now you're telling me I'm not gonna be able to put up a fence. I should have did it last year.
I don't think we're saying that you can't put up a fence, we're saying whether there's a portion of the corner that for safety purposes, that you wouldn't be able to put it right there.
Those bushes were there for longer than a lot of people here have been alive, and nobody ever got hurt, Lisa. And I don't know of any alleys around here that anybody's pulled out of in front of somebody and gotten into an accident.
I understand. But unfortunately for these conversations, and we've had other conversations, just because of things not being enforced in the past, that doesn't mean that for my purposes, that that's gonna be my recommendation to council, that because it was okay before,
What
that
about the other
those
end of the
things.
alley, where the brewery is getting redone? That's closer to the alley and to the street, and you can't see a damn thing. But you're not gonna make them rip it down. You're adding more traffic and more everything else to the other side.
There's clearly, when there's a building, we're not gonna make people move a
Well.
building, you're correct. And just to explain, as Al and I talked today, I think those of you that have been on the council know that we don't talk about how far something is set back from the curb, because you've had issues with houses, that, those that were on the council before, when you measure off of a curb. So Al's explaining it as 10 feet off the curb, but his proposal is on his property line. So it's not 10 feet, like everything that we refer to is always how far back from your property line.
Well, and that was another thing. I just spent $500 and some to get it surveyed, because you said, I'm not gonna issue your permit until you get it surveyed. So I got it surveyed.
That's correct, because I have to know when it's that kind of a corner
Yep.
and for how close you are to the sidewalk.
So I got two.
And I didn't say you
got
had to get
two
it surveyed.
permits in underneath the ordinance that I can put a fence up to my property line. I got 2 permits in asking for, requesting for it.
Which is
One should
exactly,
have been last year and should have been approved.
you chose to withdraw it. I understand
Yeah,
that I
because-
explained, but I explained to you because it's true. You said, are you gonna redo the sidewalk? And I said, yes, at no cost to the taxpayers. Normally, if you had that was part of the negotiation that we had with everybody, getting those easements, that you get a free sidewalk where everybody else around town has to pay for deteriorated sidewalks, and that was part of asking you for the easement, and this fence would be in the easement. So
No.
I was not trying to finagle a way for you not to get your fence, and you still will get a fence permit. It's what happens on the corner. And all of you that came to the public hearing talked about your concern about safety on that road. But then when it comes to the fence, you don't want us to think, and I know you don't think it's unsafe
You
because
have
nothing's
disregard
ever,
for safety on the highway, so what's the difference?
but we're in the right of way. And again, you
I'm
feel
in my
that
right
way.
of way. I got it surveyed.
I understand.
And the ordinance says I can put the fence on my property line.
You're right. It's up to the council. I am advising based on public safety that you wait, because coming out, and we have, and have we talked about this? Like, you don't believe me that we were talking about this, but those of you on the council know that I've been asking for this information for how long? A long time.
Over a year and a half.
Okay, so we're
About
now
a year
working
now
on
Since
it.
I put my first permit in.
Right, and we've gone to other properties and said, like, there's been bushes that people complain about from a pool where they're coming out on First Avenue. And now you are, like, that's the thing, like, you don't want that traffic where it is, but it is gonna be on the outer lane now. So anything that people pull out there, their nose of their car is gonna be out there. All they have is the sidewalk.
It's gonna be better visibility than most places around town.
I understand. If the council wants me to issue your permit, that's on them. But I'm not issuing it without having this conversation. That's what I told you. And that's why I understood this wouldn't be a comfortable conversation, but I wanted you to understand what the legal counsel said, which is you have a right to put a short-term stop until you decide something. If you don't think that it's important to balance that public safety with allowing the process to go through, and you want me to issue the permit, I will.
The
But-
public safety that nobody's ever getting in an accident there, so, and there was always bushes and it's always been.
Right? Well, when people were here, I'll add this, Al, because,
Al, just for clarification, are you talking about 10 feet from the property line?
No, I'm talking from reference, because I didn't know where my property line was.
Okay.
I thought I knew where it was. My sidewalk is the edge of my sidewalk is 10 foot from the curb. My pin now, that I know where it's at, is actually 11. So I'm gonna put it in 11, maybe 11.6. I just wanna come straight off my house and go to the alley.
That's from the east side, east edge of the
The
sidewalk.
west,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
east side of the sidewalk,
West
yes.
side of the house, west far corner, straight back to the alley.
so it's gonna be right up against the sidewalk.
No, it's gonna be.
Okay, a
Sidewalk
foot.
curves, so the last 5 foot is gonna be up against the sidewalk. If you want me to leave a panel off until you're done with construction, you shouldn't get any further than that.
Yeah, but it's gonna be that when you pull out of that alley, you're gonna have a 6-foot solid fence, and you're not gonna be able to see down the road until you get out to the sidewalk. You're gonna be crossing the sidewalk before you can see with your car.
Well, there was 6-foot solid hedges for 35 years.
I believe you, because I know that we haven't enforced it, but that's not on me. I'm not doing that. So if the council wants to, Al, I know this one is gonna be popular with you.
You just like to make rules.
No, I feel like I follow the rules, Al. I didn't make this rule. And when I drive around and we see all the things that are in the way, and I'll give you another example when you say it never happens. So we went to a business about the Vision Triangle because someone came to me and said, what's the rule? And thought it was unsafe. And that business owner said, for 50 years I've been allowed to do this. And everybody blew it off. And guess what happened 2 weeks ago? There was an accident, head-on, 2 cars, because of the exact corner that you can't see around. So am I supposed to then, like, and that's my problem, and I talked to Fred about it, I said, this week, we need to go and address it. Because just because you've been allowed to park your cars at your business on a corner that's on our land and in the Vision Triangle of your land, and the guy said, this is what's gonna happen, people are gonna crash into each other, and it was 2 weeks ago that Brad Stainer took a call of 2 kids crashing into each other on a corner that you can't see at. So do we wait until then? Like, and that's where I say, like, I know my job's not popular, Al, but
One thing about an alley though, you can't see, they're gonna slow down.
fair enough. But one of those 2 cars had to stop, and they still crashed into each other. Like, had an accident. Because, and everybody says, and that's exactly what the business owner said to Brad when I asked Brad to go up there and talk to him about it. I've been allowed to do this for 50 years and nothing happens. Well, now it did. And last time when you told me nobody falls on sidewalks, that was on a Monday night. 2 mornings later, and you were there, 2 days later, there was an 80-year-old lady who fell on the icy sidewalk. But nobody falls on sidewalks here. So it's I don't have a problem with it, but it's it is not my job to not look at those rules and enforcing them, and that things can happen even if they never happen.
Well, and I have to say, I appreciate the fact that you are trying to have us be proactive instead of reactive to things.
Yes.
And I understand, Al, I get your frustration, I truly do, and like, that, you're right, the hedges have been there for longer probably than I've been alive. But I don't know what the right answer is here, because you're right, people do come out of the alley much slower than they're going to on a street. But do we want, because there's never been a problem there, do we want to just assume that there's never going to be? And then suddenly, my brand-new driver is pulling out of working at Moski's and gets T-boned. Like, I don't want that to happen either. So I'm trying to respect your viewpoint here, but like also think of the safety of the other people in the community.
Fred, where that accident was the other vehicle cut in the corner of the intersection, or were they on their own side?
Both vehicles had driver's side damage to them. One vehicle was actually stopped at the stop sign where it was supposed to. The driver coming around the corner cut the corner way too short
Because of the curvature of the street.
because of the curvature.
And because there's cars parked there, and they can't see that well.
The driver that came around the corner, it didn't matter because they weren't looking at those cars. They were actually coming from First Avenue, going around to Second. The cars paid no variation into, or no observation into the view.
Right, but in that corner,
They just cut that corner way too short. They
Right.
came around where the car was parked.
where the car was
At the
stopped.
Stop sign, yeah.
Right, but the point is that what,
The guy that was legally parked, the other car cut the corner too short and collided with him.
right, but when you're driving, so this is at Second and Monroe by Lehman's.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're,
People cut that corner all the time.
Because
right,
the street drops away,
Yeah.
and
It's an angled
it's an
street.
off, it's an off camber.
flat, and then yeah.
Yeah.
but from my
It's
perspective,
really a three-way intersection there.
so, but from my perspective, as a new person to a community, when you're driving places, like when you pull up and you're on Second heading west, and you're gonna take a right to get to First by Casey's, you have to pull out further than you should to be able to see if those people are coming at you. Which is why, if you don't have cars there,
Actually, you don't. The way that street is designed, if you're sitting at the stop, or the stop sign here, Monroe Street goes that way. Monroe Street, instead of going straight across, angles back toward First Avenue. So if you're sitting there, anything that's coming off First Avenue, you're gonna see it, just
Right.
because of the angle.
So I actually have experience, 'cause I get to drive that road
Yeah.
every day.
because your office
So-
is there.
I go there all the time.
So I come through and I shoot straight across that, you know, and I go down the dip and then down into my office there or whatever. And I actually had the conversation with Phil, which I never would have thought, never gave it a thought in going through, but it was like, I don't know, probably 3 weeks after me and him were talking, and I'm like, I don't know if that'd be a problem or whatever. So the problem isn't when you're coming up, it is you can't see, but you scoot up there to the stop sign and then you can see going around this way. It's when the people come off first.
Yeah, they
And
cut into
now
it.
I'm coming up here to the stop sign, which I gotta go all the way up there to make sure I kinda look around. And they come around and then they cut. And so when you got that combination of me coming up and them cutting, that's when the hit happens, because they can't see me until I'm right
At the stop
here.
sign.
And so they're automatically doing that cut, because they don't see you coming until you're right into the side of them by the time they come across there. So that's where that hits in there, is you kinda really gotta watch if somebody's coming off that side there. So, yeah, I mean,
And
yes.
somebody coming off of First Avenue on Monroe, turning on Second, I mean, they do cut the corner.
Yeah.
I've sat up there at the fire department how many times and sat down the street on Monroe and people cut that corner.
And they can't see you until it's too late.
So, and to look, when we looked at the beacon, the first two cars that are parked on the corner are on city right-of-way.
By the stop sign.
Yeah, so that, like where you're saying, like you come on Second and there's cars right here and this person can't see you, the first two cars are not even on the property of the business. The next two cars are in the vision triangle. So you should have 4 cars gone, and don't tell me you wouldn't see each other better then, right? You would see each other then. So it's the same, like, it's the, are we gonna have a law that says as long as you've always been allowed to do it, we don't have a vision triangle? Because that's essentially what, you know, like there's,
Cut the corner, they wouldn't have happened either.
I understand, but they
It's
can't
true.
see each other.
That is a law about that. And there's a law about that.
Yeah, that's true.
And when you think about the alleys also, they're 10 foot wide. paved, okay? So if someone's coming out, so you can say that person's gonna stop, but now this person coming northbound into town and wants to turn into that alley, you literally can't see anything until the nose of the car is out there. Whereas at least if you have that, like there's a reason for the triangle. And I know it's not perfect for people's yards. And for me, the point of at least allowing this is that what we talked about last time was maybe we don't have the full 25 feet when it's an alley. Remember, we talked last time about maybe having it be a lesser number. I think the number 10 came up or whatever. But that's still, if we had 10, it would not be as big of a triangle for Al's Corner, but there would at least be some setback beyond a foot off the sidewalk or right to the sidewalk.
How close are you wanting to go to the alley, Al?
The alley to my fence would be,
The edge of the alley, please.
edge of the alley to my fence would be 10 foot.
Well,
Property line's like 8.
Do you have flags up yet?
There's a flag at my pin.
Could we,
You're more
could
than
we as
welcome to-
council drive that alley and get a visual look? Because I mean, honestly, I've been living in this town for 51 years, driving for 35, and I never drove down that alley, so I don't know what I'm looking at. So,
So-
I mean,
Believe me, I'm not trying to be unsafe, but I'm trying to be fair.
I think we should just all go drive it and just see what we think.
I would like to
Yeah.
table this until next meeting. Yeah, I agree.
well,
I'd like
but
to
by
table
having
it.
the moratorium, by doing this, like technically, I'm not issuing his permit, which he's applied for. So by following this, you're going to have a public hearing at the next meeting, but you're not going to do it any sooner than that. So by passing this, you're giving me a free pass to not be issuing his permit. It gives you the point, to Chad's point, of driving around and looking at it, and you're having a public hearing that's already in the paper. So it's not going to be on the next agenda. And then you guys will be able to decide, I don't know what planning and zoning will say, if they think that you should keep it as equally as restrictive of streets, and I don't have a problem saying it should be less restrictive of not having the 25, but if it's maybe 10. And I think the key when you go out there is you also have to have something that like shows what it's gonna, it's different than just thinking you can drive out there and do that. And we can put, like if it was 10 feet, we can also put flags to your point of what it would look like if it's like that.
So, okay, one more question on this. Okay, so besides us going through there, so, and zoning's on board, right?
They are going to have a public hearing and discuss it.
That's what
I
I
haven't
thought.
taken it to them.
Okay.
Because they have to have a
gotta
public
go-
hearing.
Yeah, okay.
So in this week's paper on Wednesday, it'll say, come to a public hearing for planning and zoning on February 20th. Come to a public hearing with the council on February 26th. Because you can't change anything unless
Right.
you both have a public hearing. So that's
Okay.
going in the paper.
Because I mean, I also want to know what their input is on that as well.
Yeah, you have to by law go through them first. So by the time, to Chad's point, if you guys want to drive and we can get those out there, you're not going to do anything for 2 more weeks anyway. And you're going to have a public hearing that's advertised in the paper. So more people than just Al's permit, or if somebody else came in, like, it will be in the paper for everyone to see. And I would encourage you to look at other places other than just that corner, because you're making a law for everybody. You might think like, oh, it's okay here, but go look at the one that we're talking about where the accident was, or, you know, it's hard when there's buildings. We're not going to move buildings, but we can certainly say no fences, or we've had bushes taken down to 2 feet, because it's hard to see. So to me, all you're doing here is you're just telling me that it's okay not to issue the permit. Or if you don't want to do this, then you could, I guess, make a motion to, we're not issuing any permits for the next 2 weeks, which is the same thing, really. Or just know that I'm not going to issue it, I guess.
If there's no other concerns, I need a motion on Resolution
I
1824.
just have a quick question. So Al, there will be a flag put up?
There are flags,
or
enough.
there is presently, okay.
There's a survey pin.
For your property corner.
That's all it is, though.
Yep.
Survey pin.
Okay,
And-
but-
And a flag. A stick with a flag.
Right.
But is there something indicating where the corner of the fence would be? Or could you put something up?
Well, I'm gonna go 2 foot. I'll put something.
Okay.
That would be very helpful, thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
thank you.
that would be great.
But keep in mind, I could have did this last year.
It's gonna, but I really appreciate you working with us on this, Al, because it is gonna be very helpful to know, like, what that looks like for when we drive around the rest of town, too. So I'm sorry that you have to be our guinea pig, but this is gonna be very helpful.
Well, I just think it's wrong that I could have gotten my permit last year. She talked me out of it. And now I'm sitting here fighting this today.
I will say that I
Especially when
understand,
she pulled my property up on the monitor at the last meeting and pointed it out to everybody that he's going to put a fence up. We're gonna stop this.
I
I
don't
did
think
not
it was,
say
we're
that.
going to stop this. You are more than welcome to put your fence up. We just need to make sure that it's the correct, that it's gonna be safe.
Well, according to the ordinance now, it is safe, because I could have done it. I can still do it, because the ordinance wasn't changed.
And that's why I went to the legal counsel for the council's sake. I didn't just come in here rogue saying, you guys should just ignore. This is a normal process that cities go through, because anytime you propose changing an ordinance, the same thing can happen. Everybody can be like, well, let me quick go in there before you change it, but your intent is good of why you're discussing it. So that, and literally, we were just at the county board meeting, when I went there for the library. Ironically, one of the items on the agenda was that they're looking at the process of issuing solar permits for like large solar farms. And what was on the agenda? We just announced that we're gonna change it, and in case we get any permits, let's put a moratorium on it. It's like a common thing that you don't wanna say like, oh, we're gonna announce that we're gonna change solar panel approval, so we all just run in and try to go under the old rules when you feel a concern about it. So they have the same thing. It's common practice.
I just like Chad's idea of
Taking a look.
of us taking a look, and see whether, as long as we know where the corner of the fence is, Al. And as far as continuing with the moratorium for a couple weeks or a few weeks, I don't see any problem with that either. No, I think we just need to visually see what it looks like.
So you're more comfortable with me just not issuing it? Do you wanna approve this so that it's clear
I'm
that?
fine with approving
The moratorium.
Moratorium, talking about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, and the ad's already in the paper for Wednesday, so we're not,
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Motion by Hush,
Can you also let planning and zoning know?
We will have a meeting.
Well, I know, but that it'll be like,
you mean to go look at the thing?
yeah.
Yes.
Right. But we also, I think, have to like somewhere, if you're gonna just look at Al's pin, and we said like 10 feet, I think we probably have to put some sort of a line so that you understand like what that looks like.
But he's gonna put a thing up where the fence is gonna be.
Well, that's where he's gonna have it, but you don't know what it's gonna be like if it's 10 feet back, where you draw the line, or 25 feet back. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh,
what are
I
you
see what you're
comparing?
Yeah, okay.
Like, to me, I'd like to go get like a Ross or Appliance piece of cardboard and put it up there on the corners. Like, it's easy to think what you're gonna feel like, but it's different than really having a barrier there. You know what I mean? But we'll see. I'll work with Al and to your point, who said that about planning and zoning?
Me.
Yep.
I'll make sure, Bill, that they know, or Riley, whatever, that they know, yes.
motion by Hush, second.
I'll second.
Second by Delaney, roll call.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Number 17, consideration of resolution number 19-24, authority to request library funds from Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque.
So as everybody knows, we have probably, we've raised $1.1 million. That's not all in there yet because some people were paying like in increments or whatever. But because that money's there and we're going to start paying Garland Construction now, and as I said, we also have the pressure of the Highway 136 project. So instead of us just not being clear on how Kathy and I would make these requests, I put together this resolution that Kathy and I went over that would basically be that you're giving us permission together to go, obviously with a reason, because we have bills, but basically Kathy and I would create a form that we would both sign off on, saying how much we're gonna withdraw each month from there. So that we're, in the most timely fashion, getting that money in the bank as we're paying those bills. So basically, if we know that the bill is coming, we could make the draw, say, when we had the bill last week, we could send something to the foundation last week, Thursday, and then by the time Kathy cuts the check on Tuesday, tomorrow, the money can be here. Does anybody have any, unless
Questions?
there's other ideas of how you want us to handle that money?
There's no questions, I need a motion on resolution. You got anything?
No, I'll make a motion on resolution 1924.
Motion by Gale,
Second.
second by Oliphant, roll call.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Number 18, consideration of resolution number 17-24, approval to purchase a snow pusher from Martin Equipment in the amount of $10,100.
So as I explained, the mayor, I know that you watched the video with me a little bit in the office, but we currently have an older 12-foot box that goes on the front of the loader. And we really need one that's smaller, as that extra 2 feet on each side of the paved alley. It damages the sides of the alley, kinds of rips up the grass and things like that. And so the guys want to have an 8-foot box. And instead of this one that's getting older and like the rust kind of starts where the sides meet the bottom part, we have the ability in-house to transition the 12-foot current one to an 8-foot one and clean that one up over the summer. It makes more sense to buy the 12-foot one. There are things called floating boxes, which this isn't like a truly floating box where it's actually mechanical. The guys went and looked and talked to the salesman, and they advised that there's so much mechanical operation to the ones that actually physically move in the 2-foot sections that you're kind of asking for more trouble than the benefit you get. But this one, unlike one solid piece, is actually in 2-foot sections, and it has some give as you go along a road. At the end of my alley, actually, like Phil, there's such a dip in it that when he came up, like, he slammed into the asphalt, and it's like I'm driving over the curb on the one end if I don't cut the corner differently. And it's so much easier to create a lot of damage with that larger one that's a solid piece. So we haven't bought any small equipment like this in the last couple of years. We've had money budgeted in there and haven't used it. And the guys talked about maybe asking you to do it next winter. And then I said, well, we really need to get this one going so that you have the time over the summer when you don't need to have it up there to be able to build the 8-foot one. So I think the mayor, you were supportive of it, and when we went over it. So
Yep.
the recommendation is to allow them to purchase that.
If there's no questions, any motion on resolution number 17-24?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Oliphant,
I'll second it.
second by Gale, roll call.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Number 19, consideration of resolution number 14-24, fire department mileage reimbursement.
We discussed this a couple months ago for EMS. Then Bert and I talked about that, not that there's a lot, just like with EMS, but that if they do have to use their personal vehicles, since we don't provide either department with an appropriate vehicle to drive any sort of distance to get stuff or go to meetings. So we are just asking for a similar approval for fire.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Roush,
Second.
second by Oliphant, roll call.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush. Gale.
Aye.
Number 20, consideration of resolution number 11-24, adoption of a conflict of interest policy.
Last meeting, we adopted the procurement policy. These are the two policies required because we're getting federal ARPA money for the Bach project, that $600,000 grant. Kind of looked for some samples and put this one together based on some other communities. So it basically is outlining that as public employees, public officials, making sure that we act with the utmost integrity in making sure that we don't have conflicts, or as employees, when we have access to things, that we're not using our position for public, private gain based on our public position. So this has to be put into the system before we get our final payments, and so I'm bringing it to you now.
Is there any questions?
Is this the exact, like,
So they didn't.
cutout version that they have?
Yeah, no. So in the procurement case, they gave us a sample. And then I emailed them back and was like, I can't find a conflict of interest one. And they're like, well, you just have to say if you have one in writing and then have it in writing. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm not just going to start writing this myself. So I went to Bettendorf just as a bigger community. And then there were a few things that I tweaked, but I got it from Bettendorf, and they don't give a sample. So as long as we have one and say we have one, and that we review it and have it on file.
Need a motion on resolution number 11-24.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Oliphant,
I'll second.
second by Roush, roll call.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Number 21, discussion on snow removal sidewalk charges.
So in your packet is the invoice from Shakamel's, page 71. You can see on here that the bills range from $50 to $80. Some of those were cases where people did not make any attempt to do it, and a couple of them are attempted shoveling and that it wasn't wide enough, or in the one case, the one that we talked about here with people present, was one side had an attempt and one side did not really. And so Megan requested being able to discuss what we do with these bills. And I guess I'll let you go first since that was your agenda item.
So, this is my proposal, is I think we had Snowmageddon. We were not expecting this when we drafted the ordinance originally. And I think that as a council, it would look good for us if we work with these people. Obviously, we know the bill's a lot smaller than what we were anticipating them being, but I still think that anybody that made an attempt to shovel should have these small amounts forgiven this one time. And the people that did not make any attempt whatsoever, they should be billed. But this is our day zero. We move forward from here. People now know the expectations, and we move on and put this behind us. I think it makes us look good as a council, that we're willing, that we do have empathy, that we are willing to work with people in town. You know, it was extenuating circumstances, and I would like to see us, you know, forgive the people that did make the attempt.
So I guess my question is like, of these 5, like how many made an attempt and how many?
So 411 First Avenue, which has 2 of them, the first and the fourth, that's a vacant house. So that's no attempt, and that was an 80 and a 50, and it was less because one was the big snowstorm and one was the littler one, the following week. It's a hard call on 300 First Avenue East, because that was attention drawn to it based on 110 Polk Street, people being upset, and coming around the corner while Shakama was out there and saying, what about that one? And it's a vacant lot that no one lives there. And that was the smaller snow again. So they didn't make an attempt, but it was the smaller amount of snow.
300 First Avenue East, not a vacant lot.
Wasn't that, or that was the one, no, never mind.
Yeah.
That was when you called that guy.
That one was in the 200 block of First Avenue East. And I don't see that one, that one got cleaned.
You called them. So this is the one that would be, but still, it was a part of the discussion, I think, because of that whole area. But it would be between Polk
It'd
and
be-
Tyler
Yeah, it's
on the
actually-
south side of the road.
It's Cascade Elementary School parking lot is across the alley from it, so.
Yep.
And I know we had talked to them one time, they did have it cleaned the first time, but I don't know why they didn't get it completely cleaned the second time.
So
But
then,
that's where that one's at.
stay there, Fred. Please.
I just want to clarify
Please,
that.
because this is my question for the next one. So 110 Grant is over here, and while this is also an attempt, you specifically talked to the owner, who has a rental property there, the second one. You know who I'm talking about? Because you told me that you told him he needs to widen out.
Yep,
And then there was a big lull, and then we came back, and he didn't do it.
yep,
So there I struggle with, even
Yeah.
though he, right, you know what I mean?
yep.
Okay.
He did say he was almost 70 years old, he was gonna wait until it warmed up to get it clean, he made a small path through it. And then, yeah.
So then there's the question, like, is it because you're older and you tried? Because that, you know, like, I think some of it I understand, like with the poke, you felt like people didn't understand. But this is a case where Fred, all that discussion about we should make a personal attempt and we should let them know and be kind and warn them, like, this person was warned. And all of this was far beyond 24 hours. So I don't know what the answer is. And my only thing, like, you guys again can do whatever you want. My only concern would be you feel like everybody knows now. But the next time when it happens and that person comes and says, I didn't know, is our procedure going to be that when you say you didn't know, that you get a freebie? And
No, and that's not my suggestion. I think that we have a better plan in place moving forward. We're hiring someone to do this, I believe. That was my
that person who
understanding.
doesn't want to do it anymore, so we'll see.
Okay.
Hopefully, we can just get through this winter.
Well, but it's hopefully more consistent, you know, moving forward. And I think that this, I don't know, my suggestion is this is day zero and we move on with a more consistent approach to this.
And is your proposal that they don't have to pay anything, or they should have to pay something less? That the taxpayers have to pay for their bill?
Well, I'm struggling with that one. I mean, I get.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, Fred did talk to him, and But
Well, I'm saying any of them, like,
All 5 of them.
because even the people that, like, on Polk Street, like, they had a notice on their door for 2 days and said they saw it and ignored it. So, like, that's the hard
And the part
part.
that I struggle with too is it's not a new ordinance. It's been on the books for years. The only
Yeah, we
thing
didn't
that
change it.
changed is how we're enforcing it.
Could you live with something less but not nothing? So that at least we're not saying that you had no consequences? Or how about, like, we don't have to pay this bill, but we don't charge the $50 admin fee? So then, because, I mean, we're paying this bill on behalf of a person. That's the hard part. Like, all the other taxpayers have to pay for them.
Right.
So what if we said, we pay this, you have to pay this, but because of the process and everything else that we, and we could even say for all these, for all that matters, we just won't charge the $50 admin fee until going forward. Then we're not out actual money, or nobody's paying on behalf of someone else. So it would be, or maybe something less. Or whatever the council wants, we'll do.
I mean, I'd like to know what everybody else thinks.
So my thought process has always been from the very beginning that the whole thing to keep in mind when we're doing these things is remember that it's the ones who don't do it at all. They don't make an attempt, they don't try, they make it hard for everybody else in town is more the focal point of the thing. I mean, yes, should you try to do your whole sidewalk? Yes, you should. Now, are there gonna be people who fall short? Yes. Do the drift shut sometimes and then you have to get back out there and do it? Yes. That stuff's going. But I think the main focal that everybody wraps their head around when we're inspecting it, when we're going through it, is whether or not they are attempting to get their sidewalk cleaned. That's the main objective of the thing. It's the people who don't do nothing. It's the people who never cut the grass. It's the people who never want to maintain their property. Those should be, is what we're more focal on, you know what I mean? And, you know, making the attempts for them to know that they need to take care of their property. They need to be in charge of their property, that type of thing. As far as this is on the books. I mean, I don't think there's taxpayer-wise, anybody's gonna be happy about taxpayer eating it. But it's not like it wasn't out there, so. I get the ones that were charged for being too narrow. I'd like to see that go away too. I don't think it's so much of a big deal, but we're here. And so now we got the bills out there, and I don't think we really can turn around and go back the other direction for right now, for this year. But I think when whoever takes over that in the future, I think that should be more the scope of that is really looking for people who don't even try, that don't do nothing, that make it hard for everybody else. Not so much people who are actually making it.
Do you think maybe you could tag the ones that aren't wide enough, but maybe we don't send the contractor back there?
Because that's too hard. I mean, otherwise you're gonna have to get out there and be like, you know, your sidewalk wasn't perfect, and that just gets to be a whole nother ballgame, and I just don't think we wanna go down that road. I think it's just more focusing on, did you or didn't you? You know, I think that's more the ballgame.
Why don't we just, our one option would be to, first of all, waive administration fees for the one property that has 2 claims against it, charge them full price. It's probably gonna go in their taxes anyway,
It's a realtor and bank.
or whatever the case is.
So wait,
And if we take the other 3 properties and cut those in half,
Well, were all three of the other properties, were there at least attempts made?
that's my understanding.
Okay.
I don't know about 300 First Avenue.
Yeah, they actually had cleaned it the very first time, and like I said, it.
What about the second time? It was
they
2
hadn't-
separate
they hadn't
incidents.
been out there as of the day that it was done, they hadn't been out there.
So they made no attempt the second time.
No, but it had blown back in.
Right.
At least they made an effort. I mean, at least they, whatever, and
Yeah, I mean, I knocked on the door the first time and talked to the kid, and he went right out and started doing it.
Okay, so,
It was minus 32 when he was doing it.
so, just so we have, so everybody, when you said the 411 First Avenue bill, That's the one that there's a realtor or whatever.
Yeah, basically, there's.
What are
two-
you saying
two-
for that
two
one?
charges.
So that's 130, and then what are you saying about their admin fee?
All the admin fees would go away.
So
Even-
don't charge anybody admin fees for all 5?
That's, well, unless, however the council feels about it, I guess, but.
And they were warned, like, I talked to the house after the first one,
That's-
and I sent her the names of the contractors, and they still did nothing.
Okay. That's up to the council, perhaps we do.
So do you want to maybe charge them 150, one of the 50s instead of 2? Because this would be 80, 50, 50, 50 under the code.
That's fine with me.
So maybe do 150 for them?
I would agree with that.
That's fine with me.
So they get one because it's going on one bill. Look at it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think
So it's,
that should kind of be it.
so
going
180
forward.
for that house, right?
Mm-hmm.
80 and then 150. No, sorry, that'd be 230, right?
Wait,
Yeah, $230.
No, we
No.
have.
no,
Oh, we're saying one, never mind, sorry.
180.
Okay, 180 is right. And then what do you want to do about the other 3?
Just cut those
Cut their
in
bills in half
half. Cut those in half.
and no 50?
That's correct.
So they would get 40, 40, 35?
That's correct.
I think at least it's something. Anybody else? Can anybody live with, everyone else live with that?
We'd be recouping about $300, almost $300 out of the bill at the end.
Correct.
If that's okay with everybody, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Oliphant.
Thank you, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks. Second?
Second.
Second by Hush. Roll call.
Roush.
Hi.
Hush.
Aye.
Gale.
Nay.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Number 22, reconsideration to undo resolution number 07-24. Actions will follow original number 99-23 sidewalk snow enforcement.
So you'll remember that at the last meeting when Fred came up during his report, that was when the conversation all transpired about, or it might have been a month ago, sorry, where you basically said the police don't have to do sidewalk enforcement anymore. But it was not an agenda item, nor was any action taken. So we obviously aren't making them, and it hasn't snowed anyway. But because we have 2 resolutions on the book, and 07-24 undid 99-23, we just want you to have a simple motion, if you still concur that the police aren't going to be involved in this, that you're just taking off the books 07-24.
But until we can get somebody hired, I think we need to keep them as, because what happens if we get snow next week?
I figured I'd be going out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to say.
I think we need to keep police on until we can get somebody in place.
Yeah. I don't know if we will anymore this year. Hopefully we don't get any snow, but
No, it's done.
it's up to you guys. Just Kathy brought that up as a, you kind of took action without taking action when Fred was at the podium. So you just want to wait
That's,
Just table
and
this?
just play it by ear?
that's what I think.
Table.
Kath, you okay with
Yeah.
that?
Okay. Number 23, fiscal year 2025 budget discussion.
Fred, did you catch that? Yep. Thank you.
All right, so tonight, I'm going to go over some stuff later, but because we have 3 department heads that can go over their stuff, let's let them, we'll have Mike go first, then Fire with Bert, and I don't know who else is talking, Nick, and then Fred stays for the rest of the meeting anyway, so Fred go next, and then we'll go through a couple of things in general. Is that okay with the council?
Yep.
All right, so everybody has this in front of you, including Mike, so he may have some other stuff. What's in here is basically what Mike gave me for their budget, minus a couple things that I think I only changed the insurance because these guys wouldn't have known kind of the latest on the insurance, and when I mean, like, that's vehicles, the building, things like that. So I think minus what Mike presented, that's what I would have added myself.
Everything that we left blank when I submitted, we didn't know.
Right,
that's
so I put those in.
Blank.
And so they are the 160 chunk. So you're gonna start at the very bottom of page 8. They have 4, the number on the bottom of the right-hand side. So the middle number for ambulance is 160. So you'll see 4 accounts at the bottom of 8, and then the rest of it goes on to page 9. So go ahead, Mike.
So we basically left it about the same as it has been last year and the year before. Our supply costs has been down a little bit because the first year we had to buy everything. Now we're just buying as we got to resupply. The only thing that we had, that you guys had changed was our fuel cost. We went an extra $500 because, you know, you never know what fuel costs are gonna rise and, you know, everything like that. So we're okay with the 45, you know, the 500 increase. We went a little bit higher on operating supplies and materials. You know, you brought it down, you know, another $2,000. That's what we had approved or submitted last year, so we don't have a problem with that either, you know. And you know, like I said, you know, we're good with what everything, you know, the four of us looked at it when we had the adjournment. You know, we're good with everything that you guys submitted and made the changes on. You know, our call volume was just down a little bit from last year than it was the year before. I want to say it was like 25 to 30 calls less, you know.
You're saying,
Okay, so 10 to 15, we were, you know, less than the year before.
and you're looking at calendar years for
Right,
that.
right, January to January,
So 22 was a little bit more than 23.
correct. So,
You have anything else? Otherwise, I was going to talk about your capital equipment line item. So if you look on page 9, it's the second or the last actual account number. So you'll remember that there was that Jones County referendum where you can get the money that they're keeping or that they're taxing everybody. So one of the things that we learned is it's pretty strict on what you can spend that on, and it has to be bigger purchases. So we budgeted for the 20,000, so Chad, you weren't here, but basically there was a referendum for Jones County people that passed successfully that there's a separate tax now for EMS. And so then there's a way that like all the money comes into the county, they have a formula of how it comes back out, and we're allocated for 20,000 a year. But we can't just say like, hey, we had a budget and here it is. So like it has to be, like the biggest thing that we're gonna be able to is if there was ever building costs, so we could collect it if we ever looked for a new station, which was one of the recommendations. Or it has to be like big vehicle repairs, or if we buy an ambulance. Now, from the budgeting side of it, putting it in the revenue side, unless we know we're gonna have that expense. The good news, though, that I found out for sure from Whitney, the auditor in Jones County, is that that money will sit in an account for us. So if we go through this year, which we really don't have, like, as I looked at the list of, we planned on getting that 20,000 in the year that we're in right now. But as I looked at the list, like, I don't know that minus maybe we turn in like the new tires or, you know, when that thing blew, but it's still not really the intent. It's meant to be bigger stuff. So I think we have to back off on looking at the revenue side of it and then know that that's out there. So it's basically like a $20,000 set aside for us, whether we wait till an ambulance comes in. But it's there for us. And for my biggest thing in talking to Whitney, again, she's the Jones County auditor, was making sure that it's not use it or lose it, that it is staying under the column of Cascade. So that is what that we had, if you look on the capital equipment, you can see it was really little. And then when you get to this year, it was 20,000, and then, did you have what your intent was for the 25? Do you have something specific that you were trying to use that for this year?
one of the monitors is getting older,
Okay.
you know, I mean,
And do those cost that much, or?
they're usually about 30 to 35 grand
Okay.
with all the, you know, the accessories that you need with it, you know,
Got it.
blood pressure cuffs and stuff like that.
So monitor, you're saying heart monitor, when you have people hooked up
Defibrillator.
and showing? Oh, the defibrillator itself? Okay. And then the one thing that I was also like, we'll talk about this in all the departments, but because Mike's working on cameras and having cameras at every location, that would be maybe a couple $1,000s out of each budget that we've added for every place that we have a physical building, that there would be one like pointing at the exterior. We also have like different locking mechanisms now for both buildings, fire and EMS, that'll kind of change the people getting in and out of those buildings, so. But that would be something else that I added. And then I think, Mike, the only other one that I change was insurance general. When you see that, it's a 6408, so for them, it's like 6 lines on page 9. That's projected to go up again, so I upped that from 12 to 13. And then obviously, what's not in here yet is we'll need to know if we're gonna do like the hiring a director and how we're gonna pay people for that. You know, they kinda had numbers in there and I'll have to extrapolate that in, but I didn't wanna reflect that in the budget till we at least had talked about it tonight. So that would be another change. Because right now, the only thing that would be on something like that line item would be that 12,000, which is in the middle of page 9's chunk under volunteer compensation. That's what we've been giving them, not this year yet, but. And then when Mike talks about the, where we didn't used to have to pay for supplies, and now we do, because the hospitals don't give it to us free anymore, that's near the bottom of their accounts, 4 up, it's the 6507 is where we charge all that, which again is why you can see in the farthest left column, it was only $8,400, and then it went up to 16, that was when that started. And then this year, I think was our first full year of having to pay for all that stuff. I don't think it started right away in January of '22. I think it kind of came a little bit into that year. It was January 1. Okay. Are there any questions for Mike? Otherwise, obviously, we'll have to make some adjustments here.
I do have a question. It's not necessarily in reference to your budget. Okay, so like fire department has like the farm board. I guess, do we know why like EMS doesn't have the same type of?
It's just not the way they're set up.
I was just.
But we do have a township revenue.
Okay.
So we have, I think it's because usually fire's set up that way where they have a board and we divide the costs, and that's required. Remember, fire, you must have a fire department by state law.
Okay.
EMS, you don't have to. Not that you don't want to, of course, but you don't by law have to. If you dissolved it, not a good idea, but it could go away and you're not doing anything wrong. You can't just say like, oh, we're not having a fire department anymore. So there's like a limit on how much townships are allowed to tax. So when we get to the revenue side of things, I can show you where that is. But Kathy and I, you have all those agreements with the EMS people. So while we still have the townships involved, instead of fire going to them and they have a meeting in a separate checking account, for ambulance, they all of their bills come through us, and then we charge essentially the EMS. So when you look at the very first page of this whole chunk, and then you go 3, 6, 7, like right under the local grants, you'll see a 160. Again, that tells you it's ambulance, and it says township contributions, and you look across that we're budgeting 25. The 25,756. You see that,
No.
Chad?
I'm looking.
Right here, look, page 1, like right about right there.
Oh, okay.
Township
Oh, I see it.
contributions.
Yep, yep.
So then what Kathy and I do is we have to go back into the values that the state determines, and it's based on their assessed value, and then they're allowed to charge 35 cents or something, it's some small amount. So then we do a spreadsheet, we add all their new values, we put in what percent of their, like, 2 of our townships, we cover 100%, and then there's some where these guys go to part of their township and somebody else around us goes to part of their township. So then they have that agreement, and then when we calculate what they owe us $25,000 for next year. That's what our estimate is. So in this case, like, we pay all the ambulance bills and we bring some money in. In the case of the fire department, they, a few things we pay for and send them a bill to send half the bill to the farm board. Most things they pay for and send us each a bill. But like the things that we pay are things that are under our control. So our insurance, for example, because it's our building insurance, we bill them out half of that. The utilities are in our name, we bill them half of that. Whereas everything EMS is under our umbrella, and someone's just paying into our coffers for the service that we provide outside of the city. And I think it's just because they're not required.
Does that, okay, Jones County, they'll call and say, okay, how many, in the fiscal year, how many calls did you have that originated in Jones County? So, I don't remember what it was.
You mean since the referendum?
I'm
Or
sorry?
was that before the referendum, or just
Yeah.
since, before even? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so does that determine on what the townships in Jones County, okay,
It's all based on tax value.
okay.
So it's just, like I said, like in the Cascade Township, you do 100%, right? all of Cascade Township is in your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And then there's like Whitewater and R-Word, Richland, different things like that. So there's a few of them, and we have that percent. So if it's like Blair Gleason and all the people in charge of all that stuff back in the day said of this township, and then they probably did like a geographic area and said like, this is Cascade and Worthington, or somebody else goes wherever. And then they took what percent of that it is. So sometimes we have to take the total value of the township times a percent times the tax rate. And then if it's 100%ers, which I think there's 2 or 3, then we take their total tax value times the tax rate. So then we give them, there's a spreadsheet with, I think we did 7 or 8 of them the other day. And then we send that out to all the townships, and then they pay us twice a year. So it's supposed to be like December 1 and June 1. And then that's a specific line item on their tax bill. So a number of the townships tell the county, just give the money straight to Kathy. So when she gets the money transferred from the county, and it has like our tax collections, sometimes if they've signed an agreement, it says like Whitewater taxes for EMS. And so like we get it directly. And then some have it go in their coffers, and then they send us a check. It would be ideal if we could just get them all to do the tax thing, because then they're not worrying about it. But they have to know at budget time, because then they know that's what they budget to pay us.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I was just a curiosity.
Yeah, I think it's because there's, like when I was down in Eldridge, they had a farm board the same way. So I think that's a statute for how you guys can get set up. More questions? So we'll work on what those numbers need to look like depending on where the council direction is with if there's going to be EMT pay and director pay. But for now, that's what this looks like. Do you have anything else, Mike? All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Bert and Nick, whoever's coming up, Brian. So fire is right above ambulance, so it'd be on page 8.
As Riley pointed out, my budget is a little complicated with the whole 50/50 thing. So I was looking at during the intermission there too. I think we got a few things confused, Lisa. It looks like utilities and the telephone, you only put in there the 50% portion, but you guys.
Oh, yeah.
So just, like,
We'll
we can
fix
go-
that.
That can be done later, right? We can
Sounds
fix
good.
that.
Yep. Yes, we
Um,
can.
Obviously, last year was a kind of a big year. We purchased a fire truck, or we're in the process of purchasing a fire truck. So when we went into the budget this year, well, there's no shortage of needs there yet. I mean, the building obviously has a lot of things that need to be done, and we have other rigs that need to be addressed. We thought this year would be good to, I actually came down a little bit just because I really dug into some other numbers, some things that we never were using, adjusted them out of the budget, moved them to some other places that made more sense. That fire truck, from what Nick tells me, is still in April, is what we're being told. They do have the chassis and stuff, so that is happening. So hopefully that'll still follow through and on schedule, but, right now, we're not looking to do a whole lot of major items in the station or on the rigs. We do have some garage doors, so we looked into our, capital improvements line item there. We were gonna start doing a couple doors a year, because obviously you've ridden by there, it's a lot of doors. And some of them are older, definitely older than me, and probably older than several more of us. That's a huge concern for us. We've always had Dennis Steckline, kinda helped us out and keeps the doors up and running. And he just said it's getting harder and harder to piece parts back together for him. So he said we really should start looking into that, so we got that process rolling. And instead of doing like, I think, is it 8 or 9 doors? 8? 8. Which would have been like $34,000 total. We thought we would do it a little piece at a time just to keep things under control.
So Bert, do you want to explain under capital improvements, then that was 6,700 on the city side, which is one door, but the farm
Yeah,
board is
we're gonna
paying
do
for
two.
another door.
Yeah, so essentially it'll be like the farm board bought a door and you guys bought a door, because we do that 50/50 deal, so.
And then I added the 2,000 to make it 8,700, which would be that, where I referenced some camera money
Correct.
per site. So they gave me 67 for one door, and I added $2,000 for what Mike's trying to figure out, Mike Delaney, IT Mike. So that we have those. So that's why that's in there. So carry on. And then you're gonna talk about the 6,000 above that?
Yeah, so our capital equipment, that's usually been, you know, I guess I'm looking straight at Bill, you've done this with me several times. It's usually where we have our gear, Nomex, stuff like that. Well, we're sitting good on Nomex and stuff. We do have a few sets of gear that, for all intents and purposes, are at replacement time. But due to the fact that those gear belong to people that don't typically involve themselves on interior structure fighting, we're gonna hold back on those gear to get our helmets done. Because obviously, we're all learning as we go with these things, and the lifespan and all this stuff, even though you wouldn't think that what happens to a helmet. As long as it's not broken right, it should be good. Well, there's rules to all that, so. We looked at, instead of buying our normal 4 sets of gear, we were just gonna replace, and you notice the number's only 25. I know we have 30 slots. There's no point in buying helmets for guys that aren't currently here. We can always go back, and helmets aren't gonna change look that much, so. That was kind of our thought process there this year, was to go ahead and purchase the helmets for the people in the building plus one, because we decided, you know, we could have at least one spare laying around. And that was the process there this year.
And is that 12,000?
Yes,
Again, so 6 on that line item is ours, and then that's a direct bill to the farm board, so they're spending 12, 6 of which is ours.
correct. Everything else, I mean, tried to guesstimate as much as possible. I went with Lisa through the utility bills to try to adjust that to where we thought it would be closer. We've been over, we've been under before. For those of you that have been around before, the phone internet budget used to be higher. That's a pretty static number. I happen to have a little inside track on how that works, so I adjusted that number out, and like I said, we moved some of those funds to other locations that have been lacking the last few years. They've been under budgeted, so. Just trying to kind of be a little more responsible on that end of things, so. And like Lisa mentioned too, we went with a different door lock that also allows us to, you know, if somebody needs to get in the station, I can actually create a code pretty simply. Makes it nice for when we have vendors come out to do repairs and stuff like that, so. And it also allows us to, everybody knows we have one little code, so now if somebody does get on that leaves and or there's a situation where we need to change the code, maybe it doesn't affect 30 individuals all at once, so. It's everybody has their own way. Call-wise, they went up a little bit this year. Some of that is also us still learning, me and Nick taking over the last couple of years and adjusting to how we get our canceled calls, you know, calls that happen, you know, maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning for something, and dispatch cancels us before we can even make it out the door. And those didn't always get captured, but after talking to Denny and a few other people, we're trying to get better about that, because that obviously does play into grants and things like that. The breakdown, I don't know if these went out to you guys earlier. We've always had those. It kind of makes it easy for you to see how things split out, but you can see it's a pretty even split. In fact, I would say the farm board seems to be on the downward swing lately, because all districts, that's gonna be things that affect us all. You know, storm watches, things like that. And really, for the most part, when we're out watching in the west for storms, we're probably not benefiting them quite as much. It does help, because those are the reports that you hear again on the news, so it does help outer areas, but, and then parades and things like that, so. And then I always run our kind of types of calls. It's all over the board, as it has been. I'm starting to kind of keep those from year to year. Sometimes we go up in one area and we drop in another, but there's a list of those there too, so.
Those are in your separate email that I sent you, all of Bert's attachments.
And as Lisa mentioned earlier, you know, Mike did his on January to January. I also do mine January to January. It's a little easier. I guess if you guys wanted to see it fiscal year, I could do them that way from future, but
You're fine.
kind of all washes out, so.
And then again, the insurance general, I have that at 1,000 more than last year, and then I'll get with Bert about the couple that need to get switched up. And then same thing, revenue. Revenue is on page 2. You'll see farm board. And that's the stuff that we bill out directly, so. we'll have to look if that's the right number too. Any questions for Bert?
Bert, what's the next piece of equipment, major piece of equipment?
So, obviously, I said I got 8 bay doors up there, that puts, what, 7 pieces of equipment total for the doors, because we have one open. The problem is, you know, we started this problem a few years ago, when I think the first one we dealt with was the tanker in 2015. We always had this thought that we would just replace things every 10 to 15 years, but what about the tankers and the grass truck? And you've been here for all those, we did the grass truck, we've done one tanker, so we have a tanker that we all argue about all the time, and exactly how old it is, but I'm pretty sure it's older, yeah, it's older than most people on the department at this point.
But is it older than Steve?
No, and Steve
Oh,
probably,
don't-
we're gonna have to hire him.
Now we're looking at the mayor's age being
Do not,
disclosed.
do not
It's
go
also a
there.
stick shift, so I'm not saying that I've ever had anybody get on that goes, I don't know how to drive a stick shift, but those days are coming.
Oh, they're coming.
Oh, yeah.
And in standard spaces, so you can't have them anymore.
Yeah, and then we have that rescue that we take care of with our fundraising, so I would say at this point, our rescue, we're kind of holding off to see how things go. When Andy was here, he helped us get the emissions deleted on it, which I think extended the life of that vehicle and the cost effectiveness here long-term, so we're gonna hold on to that for a while, so it's really it's the other engine, which, Nick, is that a 2005 or 6?
Which one?
The other engine.
05.
05, and then our 1980 something tanker. And unfortunately, you know, you'd like to think, well, you really need a tanker? We need them both. I mean, we went through the pump thing all year here where, thank God it's been quiet, but tankers become very, very important hauling water, and we've hauled water down a lot before, so.
What does like a tanker cost?
I want to say when we bought the one in 2015, that one was a little different because that one is actually our third engine. If you ever come and look at it, you'll see it has the same pump as an engine. It's not set up the same. It doesn't haul the same amount of people. In fact, I think it only has one air pack even in it. But that was part of the water system upgrade that happened. When they looked at the ISO rating, it was going to be highly beneficial to the town people and outside to have that rig classified as a tanker pumper. And I want to say that was, I thought it was around 115, don't quote me, I have to go find paperwork. But that was also in 2015. Used to be able to build a house for a lot better prices too.
Yeah.
Compared to the current truck, which we all heard was, you know, upwards of $500,000, so.
Bert, sorry.
We've talked, I mean, it might not be feasible to keep buying brand new equipment all the time. So a tanker might have to be something that we eventually look into buying a used vehicle that we know that, you know, might jump us 15, 20 years and buy us some time in that right too, so.
Okay.
But
So we
just
were,
future problems.
so we were planning, I think our original payment that we still have left for the truck this year is like 236.
Yeah.
And then because you got the grant, how much are we each getting off of what we were gonna pay? Was it 15,000
We got
total?
$15,000 total, so.
So then
that
we'll
would-
be taking 755 off.
Yeah, so, and she's talking about the Tom Hancock grant, so that is done through Dubuque County. I think you guys have written it before too, right? It's open to the EMS and fire, and I don't think police departments, is it?
I don't think
Just
so.
the EMS and fire. We actually used that in 15 when we bought the tanker then. We've used it in 19 when we bought a air compressor for our breathing apparatuses. So we've utilized it a few times. Part of that application process, we wrote it, I think, for $25,000, being as a rig, which is the highest you can ask for. We did come back at that lower number, and that was partially because some of us had forgot that we had done it in 19, considering we weren't on that committee. So, yeah, that $15,000 will definitely help. You know, it kind of offsets. It's always a matter of moving the buckets around a little bit, so it kind of helps pay for things like helmets and stuff. The truck was already planned, it fits in the process, and I thought that made more sense at the time.
But to give you an idea, So if we're paying, we were gonna pay 236, we'll just take an even 7 off and say it's 230 is what's gonna come out of our coffers when we pay that bill. We have, as of this month, if you looked at your packet, we don't have to pull it out right now, but page 21 in your packet shows you that the fire truck account is soon approaching $300,000 in their savings account. So you would only be taking 230 out of there. So that's $70,000 that's left. And then in this year's budget, when we get to transfers, in the fiscal '24 budget, we allocated for another $30,000 to be transferred to that account. So it
Once
would,
you get the sale of 302.
yes, we get the full sale of that. So we're looking at, without the sale of the truck and paying for the truck, you'd have 100 after this fiscal year, plus whatever we get the truck for once we are able to sell it. So at least the point is that we're not like depleting the fire's equipment truck budget. And then in fire equipment, we have $77,500 in there right now. And we are adding at the end of this fiscal year, I believe, another 10. So they would have 87,000 in equipment, savings again, 100,000 plus the cost of the truck. So, you know, that doesn't mean that we have enough to do something exclusively, but, you know, to again assure the council and the public that we are continuing to commit to putting money in that. And because we're talking about EMS, in the ambulance account, that is 100, I believe, and 80. Let's see. Where did it go? 184,000.
So could we use some of that money and do all the doors?
Well, we have to charge half to the farm board, or you could say we want to give them enough for our half. Yeah,
I don't think you would want to take it out the
you
Fire
take it out
truck.
of equipment.
No, the equipment one.
equipment.
So there's, what did you say, 9? So we each have to pay for 4.5.
We have to pay for
About
8 of them.
36,000.
So if you take
to
another,
do.
well, if you take another 6,700 times 3 more, because in this budget you have 1,
So you're looking at another 20,000.
so you could choose to do that.
Whoever's gonna do it, you think they might give you a deal,
Did them all?
did them all at one shot?
I don't know. I mean, we, like I said, we only got, just for budgetary purposes, we only got the one price from one guy. I mean, the others-
But you can ask if the council's interested before.
Yeah, I'm
budget.
just curious, you know, if you would get, sometimes they're just gonna be there, they're gonna do them all, and then it might give you a little.
Why don't you at least, is everybody good with Bert asking?
Yeah, yeah.
So like, you're talking about doing your, I mean, cause like I
Say
said,
that.
I always have that duality I gotta deal with. I mean, the farm board pretty much takes our cue. If we say this is what we gotta do, that's what we do. But I don't necessarily, they don't have the same, you know, this account, that account, they just kinda have that one.
But you could go and inform them, like the council's considering us doing all 4 right away because we have some money in
Right.
reserves.
'Cause I mean, if it's.
And they can pay for 1 and then you can, like, basically you're just not gonna even Steven us. You would kind of put that aside and say, okay, all these expenses are split and the city did their 4 doors and then there would be the 6,700, assuming that was the right number, in 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years if they still wanted to do one. Just because we do them, it just means you get a few extras done sooner and pick your most frequently used doors first.
Yeah, because we're actually not replacing, I guess you asked about, we're not replacing all 8. Obviously, there was an addition at the end, those doors are,
Newer.
yeah, I don't know what the year was, but they're not
So
that
there's
old.
8 doors, but you don't need to replace them all,
We
or
only
there's
need to
8 doors
replace
you
6.
need to replace?
No, there's only 6 that we're replacing.
Oh,
So
so
the
then we
city
really
would
only
actually
need
have to pay
2.
for 3.
Yeah, sorry.
So we could add 2 more.
Yep.
That's fine.
So you essentially could, if the city paid for 3, farm board's gonna pay for 1 for sure, you get 4 of the 6 done right away. Something to think about. Or if there's more things that are a higher priority, but I was just thinking.
Well, and it's been a priority last year and this year Bert waited, but we need to get those helmets bought.
Yeah, no, that, the helmets are in there, that's happening. And we're still, we're always, Nick has been a great help with that, we're always looking for a grant. Anytime we can find something, you know, we didn't write as many the first year, there's a lot to learn. We were learning a lot of things. Nick stepped up, and now with, you know, helping me and Nick Kramer out, we got a couple this year. We got a DRA grant also that's gonna buy some equipment.
DNR.
I'm sorry, DNR, yes, sorry, DNR. that's gonna buy some equipment to help protect, which obviously, we get our radios through Dubuque County. So it's not a cost to this organization, but the care of those radios is, so they're not cheap, and obviously what we do isn't kind on equipment. And there was a way to write where we can get radio straps, which you've seen probably some of us where we bought those out of our own money, and that was just something we decided we needed to make our lives easier. We really liked them, so we priced them out for all the portable radios we have. One that'll protect the radio, and hopefully it encourages guys to grab them, because now they have a good place to have that radio versus, you know, you see guys with it in their pocket and they bend over and the radio falls out. And if that radio happens to break, the city and the farm board are gonna have to cough up, and I think the new radio was, yeah, they were not cheap.
Not a good pocket
That's
flying device.
insane in today's time for that to cost that much.
Do you have anything else? Otherwise, I have
No, go ahead.
probably one more thing. So, you know that part of our conversation with EMS was also the volunteer compensation thing. So before we finish the budget, I'm gonna work with Bert, and then, I don't know if everybody knows Brian Drew, but Brian in the back there, works on the treasurer job for the fire department. But we wanna kinda clarify that they've been getting 5,000. Some of that is going to the officer pay, some of it was like mileage reimbursement that you guys were doing that we weren't, whatever. Different things like that. And so there may be that we get to the point where that number isn't really 5,000. I'm not gonna propose by any means that we lower the number total, but it may be that once before budget time, let's figure out what that number should be. And then if it's a different number that isn't volunteer compensation, we may say like let's just make up 4 of it should be instead of 5. The extra 1,000 we'll put in a different account, so it's not getting cut as a check. And then we probably have to do the same thing that we're talking about with EMS, which is the city will pay people so that there's a W-2 and stuff like that, because we're not doing that tax stuff, which came up, you know, in the EMS conversation. So just so everybody knows, that'll be probably a shift that we'll have to make for the officers or whoever gets paid. There's not a lot of them, but we'll look at that. So that might be a shift before we're done. Not total, just line items. What else is on here? Any other questions for Bert? Thank you. Good job.
Thanks, Bert.
Yeah.
Fred, you want to come up next?
Thank you all for what you do, and same for EMS. Like, we really do appreciate you guys, like, when, you know, so.
So Fred's expenses are on page 8. He's the first chunk. Middle account numbers for the police department are 110.
Okay, so I had actually, I know Lisa was talking about 4% this year. I think I came last year and asked for 10% to try to get us up to what other departments around the area were making. So I didn't get all the information emailed back to me until kind of late last week. So I put together a little packet here with a request. There we go.
Thanks, Fred.
All right, so basically and this is gonna be the biggest part of my budget increase, I'm just kind of asking for this consideration. Looking at a 10% raise for the full-time and part-time employees for the Cascade Police Department. I have my name down first. I have my hire date is, I started March 17th, 2006. I'm getting ready to complete my 17th year. I'll be starting my 18th year here. I'm on a salary, $69,628 approximately. When it comes to holiday pay or sick time, it works out to $33.47.5 an hour, rounded up to 48. A 10% raise would take me up to about $76,590, so approximately $36.82 per hour, $83 per hour. In looking, if you look at the page right behind that, I did a comparison to the Dyersville Police Department, and the very top line there, if you look and see what that chief is making is considerably more than what I'm making here. Not asking for that. If you look down the line to where the assistant chief is actually at there, assistant chief started in 2013. They're at about 90,000. Okay. Looking back to the next page, Piasta, one of the departments never did get back to me on this, so I apologize for that. But looking at Piasta pay scale, the chief's salary was 83,000 this last year. They're doing a 3% increase, it's going up to 85,490. Looking at even the sergeant, their pay as a sergeant is going to be $33.94 or $33.95 per hour after the pay scale. So, like I said, just a consideration for myself there. Looking at Brad. Brad's hire date was 12/28/2020, so he just actually completed 3 years at the end of last year. Currently, Brad is getting $28.68 an hour. Annually estimated without overtime is $59,654.40. The 10% increase would take him up to $31.59 per hour, or $65,619.84 annually, approximately. So if we go back and we look at Dyersville again, if you look about halfway down there, there is an officer that started 12/21/2020, and that officer will be making $30 an hour as of their next pay increase. You also have an officer, and this is based on, their pay is based on experience. If you look down to the third from the bottom, there's an officer that started October 3rd, 2022. So basically 2 years worth of experience is making $32.64 an hour, or will be making $32.64 an hour. If we look at Piasta's, Brad just completed his third year, he's going on to his fourth. Their officer in that category made $29 an hour last year. They're gonna go up to $29.87 with a 3% increase. If you look at 5 years plus, the officer has already made $30.90 per hour, and then $31.83 per hour is what their increase is gonna be. So I don't think what we're asking is too far in line for what we do. We don't work for the Department of Public Works, we don't work for utilities, we work for the police department. These other agencies have numerous officers. There's 2 of us full-time, okay? We've got a handful of part-time people. Part-time people are fantastic, but sometimes things happen, we can't make a shift because we have full-time jobs with other part-time people. So that happens. If you look down at the part-time pay, we have Cleta listed at $26 per hour. 10% increase would take her up to $28.60. The other part-time officers who've been here a little bit longer are at $26.75. A 10% increase is going to take them up to $29.42, basically $29.43. Okay. I don't think that's so far out of line for what we do. A lot of these other agencies, Dubuque County, Jones County, have had 12 to 15% increases over the last 2 years, each year. Our sheriff in Dubuque County, I think he got a 20% increase this year. Jones County Sheriff got a huge increase. I know he's making considerably more than what the Dyersville Police Chief is now, so just asking you to consider it. And then also, we've talked about it for a few years. Maybe it's time in this next roster year, next fiscal year, think about adding a third full-time officer. We've got plenty of time, we can get somebody in there, we can get them trained, and I just turned 62. I'm planning on retiring in 3 years. We can have an easy transition. Maybe number 2 can move up to number 1, and number 3 can move into number 2 position, and we can keep that third position. things have picked up, we've gotten busier. Okay. So that's my wage request.
Fred, I have a quick question.
Yes.
What would a new officer, like fresh out of the academy,
Depending if we hired somebody that's already gone through the academy, we're gonna save those costs of sending them to the academy. If we hire somebody and send them to the academy, we can hire them, excuse me, we can hire them at a lesser cost, per hour, because kinda like what we did with Fred, we know we've gotta send him to the academy. I think when we sent Brad, I think the academy costs were, I'd say between 15 and 18,000.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, yeah, we can, if we get somebody that's not certified, we can send them to the academy, and then it's gonna take them a little while to get, certified. They've got a year to get certified, and then we can start bumping them up in wage after that. So, yeah.
thank you.
Yep. Going down the line, probably the next thing I looked at increasing, I was keeping everything the same as far as the overtime, and I didn't mess with the FICA, IPERS, Medicare, that kind of, or the insurance, that kind of stuff, because I knew there was going to be some changes there. The next thing I was looking at changing our fuel costs. Our fuel costs that we had budgeted for this last year were $6,000. We've already used almost 2/3 of that. The way fuel has fluctuated, I'm throwing $1,000 extra in there. So it's not a huge increase there. Same there. Then the next increase would be, I think when we get down to National Night Out, our Crime Night Out. If you look at our budget, we always go out and get a bunch of donations. Usually it's between $700 or $800 worth of donations. We budgeted last year $2,000 and we spent $3,164. So we were a little over budget there. This year, instead of 2,000, I'd like to see if we could stick maybe 3,000 or even 2,500 in there. Because we do it, like I said, we do go out and get donations. Then, yeah, really the only other, like for capital equipment, I'm gonna keep that at 3,000. We've still got 3,000 in there this year. I'm gonna be getting a hold of Mike here pretty soon to see if we can look at laptops or a desktop. If we can get a couple laptops and docking stations to put in the squad cars this fiscal year yet, we'll use that money for that. I didn't change anything on that. And then, out of vehicle and maintenance repair, I think I kept the same there. We're looking at, some squad, some computers for the office, or a computer for the office, so.
Fred, you said you kept capital equipment the same?
No, I raised that $1,000.
Okay, and I put,
Oh, capital equipment was the same, yes.
well, he put it the same, and then I added a little bit for a camera, because if
Oh,
we
yeah,
get
talked about
cameras,
cameras, yeah.
we would have one outside of their exterior area where they park on the road there, so. Even though his original numbers, I added a little bit to everybody that would have a
Yep.
camera, so
Yep.
that doesn't match his original
Yeah, we
request.
talked about that this evening. I did
Yep,
that.
sorry about that.
So, okay. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, the big change, the big request I'm asking for is the wages to, we want to keep the good people we've got here, so.
I think our practice has been, we'll have a personnel meeting and talk about the wages. And then, but right now, I have 4% is what's in all the accounts, and then the reflective, like, IPERS and all that's 4. So if we're gonna make any adjustments for anybody, in addition to 4, then we'll have to reflect that after personnel makes a recommendation.
Question?
Do you have dash cams?
No. We have a dash cam in a 2017 that actually Jones County gave us years ago. We threw it in there and it broke down almost immediately. So we have our body cams. Body cams that we use, we can actually get a device that we can attach an additional camera to the dash of the car for about $300 for the camera and the attachments.
I would think from a liability standpoint, when you look at, I mean, there's just times that, like, I mean, I've watched plenty of body cams where, like, there's a certain angle that it's always based on where they're obviously pointing. And I would say that I don't know of other cities, at least that I've ever worked in, that don't have dash cams, so I think we need to look at something like that.
Well, that and like,
So at least
something
it's always
happens
what's in front of them.
coming from behind you and you're out in the car and it catches it coming in or going out, yeah. So do you have like a vendor that's generally there, or is it something
For the dash cams?
like a 24/7, like it's on, rolls?
No. No, the ones that we had in the squad car, we turned them on in the morning when we came in, and the way, excuse me, the way they were set up, kind of the same way with our body cams, we can push the button and it's got a 30-second pre-record. With the dash cam we had in the squad cars prior, as soon as we turn the red and blue lights on, I mean, since they're on, they have a 30-second pre-record. So I'm gonna use the intersection up there by the Bent Rim. It's a four-way intersection. We used to sit there a lot and watch traffic, okay? You could see them coming in from the east, pretty much knew they were speeding. Watch them blow through the four-way stop because they wouldn't stop there. You start rolling up there, you turn the red and blue lights on, you already had them on camera going through that intersection. So it was a nice setup, but they got old and they wore out.
Is that kind of the same style that Dubuque uses?
It's similar, yeah.
Similar?
Yeah, yeah, but it's like, we'd physically get in there in the morning and log into the camera, and then we'd shut it off at the end of our shift, so.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think that's something that we should probably price and make sure we look at for budget-wise. I think it's something that should probably be there. I mean, for your safety and all the way around.
The other thing that isn't in this operating budget, but similar to where we're talking about like equipment. I believe most of this money came from when COVID happened and all this communities were allowed to apply for what we called like COVID money. And mainly the thing that communities got the money for was to be reimbursed for law enforcement salaries. That was the main thing. So that account right now is up to $82,000. And I think we have a couple years until we have to replace a squad yet. So one of the things that I think we should get the guys to get a price on is a lot of communities, and, you know, like we do have crime, and we have officers that are willing to go and, you know, try to hunt information down, and we're using like somebody's Ring camera or Blink camera that's on First Avenue. But a lot of communities at main intersections are looking at basically like the technology of license reading cameras. So this would not be part of the like building systems that we're like talking about at front doors. It would be separate. But I think, you know, there's been a number of crimes that I think have more been assigned to Brad, but, you know, he knows that it's a certain kind of pickup of a certain color, and there's just not enough detail. We can see them on cameras of other private cameras from businesses or houses, but nothing has the ability to read it. And there's systems out there that you pay every year for a subscription. They don't have to have the internet. They can license plate read, and they can narrow it down to, you can say, like, we want the last 24 hours of a white vehicle, we want every pickup truck, we want every SUV, this style, and as a part of that subscription that you get, it in an hour's time will send information to the PD saying these are your people. And
Brad's brought that up multiple times.
right, so I think we need to look at that.
Cameras like that would be handy too, because I know there's numerous times we've tracked a vehicle to First Avenue, and then you get a direction that it's going, but where does it go from, after it leaves First Avenue? Does it go north, south, east, west? I have no idea.
Well, and the other thing there is too, when you start thinking about the amount of time, let's just say like you or Brad has to take to then go and now try and contact this business. And this business's IT's gotta go and formulate, get these video, then send it over to you, and then you gotta go through it, and then go through. There's a lot of, you know, when you go to each place, there's a lot of time wrapped up just going, where if you could just make a phone call and say, between this time and this time, I need all vehicles of this color or make coming through here, and you get license plates and bing.
It's a very efficient use of the
Yeah,
guy's
I think
time.
I think it'd cut down a lot of that time there.
The other thing to keep in mind too, I think it was last week or the week before, Ring came out and said that they're no longer providing video unless they have subpoenas.
Yep. Yep.
Well, people can give them.
Well, but they would have to have a Ring subscription. Like, I don't have a Ring subscription, but I have a Ring doorbell. So I get a notification every time somebody drives by,
It's not recording.
but it doesn't record.
Oh, well, I can record like on a USB. Don't you have like your, I have Ring.
Like,
Oh,
I
I
can
have
s-
Blink, never mind.
I can screen record, but like, I would have to pay the monthly subscription to be able to like,
Review it.
to review it, yeah.
Because on Blink, it's, you just plug in a USB.
Okay.
And it obviously doesn't keep forever, but it's out there. And it's like plugged into the little piece that's in your house.
Gotcha.
Anyway, but anyway, my proposal would be if, you know, we might not necessarily change the operating budget, but I don't think it would be a bad use of that almost $90,000 or $82,000 now, but
At least get
To look at.
pricing and look at what it's gonna cost and
yeah.
explore those options, because I think that'd be good.
The other question I had, when it comes to travel and training and conferences, I
Yes.
know Fred, historically, that's always been you kind of going to the trainings. But as you said, you only have a couple more years.
Yeah,
Is-
we've actually sent Brad to, I think last year he went to a active shooter training down in Bettendorf. It was a 2-night training for him down there. And
Okay.
he's got some other stuff.
Perfect, yeah, that's my question, is it like time to start?
Yeah, and I've got a couple of things that I'm thinking about starting to get him to move into, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
My only question. How are the two squad cars? Any,
Ironically, the 2021, we have an active recall on it right now. Herb Green is waiting for the part for it. The last time we did an oil change, the recall notice came up, so they checked it. Otherwise, the 2017, Brad complained he went to get in it today, and Lee worked in it Saturday, so Brad's knees were up to his chin. He had to readjust his- But mechanically wise, it's running just fine. That'll be the one that we replace probably in 2 years, probably 26 or 27, so.
okay,
So that'll be the one going out. The other one that I'm driving mainly, I think we're about 16,000 miles on that now, so that's a 20. We've had that in service 2 years as of last week already, so.
okay.
Maybe they'll last a little longer on the outside being stored inside now, so.
Yeah, and, thank goodness for utilities. We're able to actually pull our vehicles in there, and like when we had all that heavy snow and everything, and the cold, there were times the last couple winters, I'd hop in the squad car half an hour, 45 minutes before I'd start my shift, start the car, run back in my house, get showered up, get uniformed up, hop in the car, get back, try to start the computer up, and the computer was still too cold to start up. This last cold snap we had, because it was inside, and it's not a heated garage there, but it's out of the wind, and, you know, it's still cool in there. I think I had to wait 10 minutes for the computer to start one day. So I just got it out of the shed and came down to the office, and by the time I went back out from getting our cell phone and stuff here, the computer's willing to start up, so.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's a little easier on the electronics when it's cold.
When you're getting more and more of them, so.
Yeah.
And how much are we putting towards a vehicle?
For Fred?
Yeah.
Nothing right now.
Nothing this year?
Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a little bit, but because he had that ARPA money. I think we had a little bit. Stand up.
Yeah, I don't think I have that on this
Because we typically put something there.
sheet. Was it like 5 or something like that?
I think it's 5 or 3, but why can't I see it?
What did the last squad cost?
35 plus equipment or something?
Yeah, we had to, because they changed the body design from the 2017 to the 2021. We had to buy new cages, new center console. We ended up purchasing a new light bar with that one, because the light bar that had been on the other car was like over 15 years old.
Okay.
So I think it was, by
1,000
the time
last
we
year,
got done, it was
Propose.
35 or 36 for the car, probably another
Bottom.
14 or 15 for equipment.
Okay. So right around 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we only put 1,000 in this fiscal year, and then I have in here putting 3,000 in next year.
Okay.
Right?
Any other questions for Fred?
Thanks, Fred. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. All right. Are we good with like maybe 15 minutes of talking taxes?
15 minutes?
Well, I want to at least give you kind of like where we're at with tax law changes.
You can, if you wanna go, you can go, like,
Not that you guys have to stay.
yeah, like, you guys.
You guys don't have to
I'm
stay.
giving you guys the out, like,
Thanks, everybody.
We're not offended.
yeah, like, you guys.
So you'll recall that last year, there was limitations on taxes. And that there was a conversation about if you grow too much, over 6%, you're gonna get cut back. So for those of you especially that have been on for a long time, you always heard that 810, 810, 810, that was the amount, $8.10 could be levied against every $1,000 in value, and that was what you were allowed to spend on the general fund. So the way that it works now is that if you go over 6% in your value growth, which we went up 9, you get penalized, basically. So you don't get penalized to the point that you get no new money. You get penalized in how much you're allowed to go up. And I'll give you these numbers when we have our meeting next time. But the way that they do it is they say, instead of being at 3%, you're at 9%. So we're 3% above where we should be in the limit of the growth, okay? Like, it's good that you grew 9%, but the $8.10 is the max that you can be, and then they're gonna back off 3% of 810, because you went 3% over 6. So because we were 9, you take the $8.10 and you multiply it by 0.97, so you get to levy on every 1,000, 97% of 810, which gets you to $7.86. So our new rate, instead of 810, has been lowered to $7.86. And then you still get to levy all the new growth. So you still get to capture the 9% of the new thousands of dollars, but you do it at a lower rate. Okay, confusing a little bit.
786 instead of 810.
Okay, so it's 786 instead of 810. And then when you multiply that by the new number, if you had not been lowered from 810 to 796, we would have been allowed to grow approximately $73,000 in value. So just because you have new thousands to tax, it would have created an extra $73,000 for us. Instead, when that goes down to 786 on the same number of new thousands, we will now only be allowed to go down to $50,000. So you're not physically getting less money to tax, you're getting less of an increase than you would have been eligible for if you were allowed to stay at 810. Okay? So when we talk about all the things that we're doing here, on the general fund line item, we may go up $50,000. It's like 49 and change. Okay? However, what they did not limit was liability insurance, FICA and IPERS, so our Social Security costs and our retirement for the employees, and then other benefits, which includes health insurance, life insurance, and disability insurance, and work comp. So this budget that I've prepared is balanced with maximizing those levies, maximizing the 786, and per thousand, and that's, I don't know for sure about debt numbers yet, but it's basically our max levy last year, like with everything in it together, was $11.22. 12 cents? 11.12. Because we went up 21 and it went to 33. So $11.12. This budget, and I need more time to stare at it and make sure that everything's where it needs to be, but this budget would be passed with an additional 22 cents, taking you to 11.33-ish, and it would be maximizing all those. So I think that it's not a big percent increase in the rate that's each house paying for, but if you were to look at the dollars, because you have that many more dollars to levy on, we're taking advantage of those 3 line items that aren't limited. And as an example, like, we have the ability to tax for the public works guys on those benefit line items. And in the past, you've been using RUT, road use money, and you pay their benefits in there. My proposal is that we transfer those over to the general fund and levy for those benefits. We can't levy for their salaries, but we can levy for their benefits. And that opens up a little bit more money that you can't tax more for, which is equipment. Like, they want us to look at, like, possibly at least setting aside enough money for a half or a third of a dump truck, for example. So it's little things like that, that if you were to transfer those benefits that you have the ability to levy for and use general fund money for their benefits, and then you're still using it on street stuff, but instead of paying for people costs out of road use money, you're having the ability to put in a little bit more in equipment. So my goal in this budget is, again, to try and push towards being able to do stuff. So I do have the 4% in there. You know, the change that you made with like $5,000 coming, where we upped the garbage bills for 50 cents, you know, to be able to pay for the money that we pay to the CMU to do those, like that's $5,000, but it's still $5,000 that we captured from somewhere else. So kind of trying to move the parts around to be able to do a budget that still allows us to do the things that we need to do, add a few things like cameras, you know, that we're not saying because we only have $50,000 and our people costs afford us almost that with everything that you would be doing, or higher insurance, things like that. At least we can levy for that. And it's not a significant impact. I'm waiting on a couple more numbers from the state, and then I'll bring you some of the like house scenarios. The other thing that is absolutely a game changer in this year is interest rates. So in my beginning of my career, it was a significant line item that we earned interest on the money because we have so much money sitting as required in all these reserve accounts. And then like talk about plummeting yuck of literally getting less than 1%, and we're at 5%. So this budget, even this year, should be to the good. Like we went from, look at the first page. The third chunk is our general fund interest. You can see that we budgeted like $29,000 because it was so awful. And even after half the year, we're at 46. So we will easily get to $80,000. And I mean, that's literally a $50,000 difference. Which when you heard me, like the whole thing with the foundation money, with making sure that the state pays us, that I applied right away for our reimbursement grant on Second Avenue for 25. Like Kathy and I are gonna do everything that we can to like bring money in as we can quickly, because that really is a game changer for this budget. And it doesn't mean it's gonna be like that forever, but if it affords us an opportunity to be able to get some more stuff done. So we can go over the other ones next time if you wanna look at. So again, everything in here is 4%. Turn to page 9. And there's a yellow cell there with the 129. That's kind of our, like, where I'm looking at, like, we'll decide where we want to put that. So right now, again, I want to go through this, staring at these spreadsheets, you have to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. But that number to me is, if we need to make some adjustments to the ambulance budget, you know, right now I just have it on a road line item. But if there's some additional stuff for equipment or something like that, to set it aside. The other thing I want you to think about by the next meeting is, you remember that we did a 3-year note on the sweeper at the bank. We're going to be saying how much money we should borrow. And remember that when you borrow money, you again don't have to find a place to take that money from, because the debt levy, if you incur debt. So when I was talking to D.A. Davidson, our advisors, and I said, my main question was, can we list that debt payment for the sweeper in our debt levy? And he said the easiest thing that you could do, and you would pay less interest, is to borrow the money and pay off that loan. And then put that loan to like this loan coming up for the street. So it's something that we can think about. Like we have a fairly big debt capacity, and by no means am I encouraging us to debt ourselves too much. But sometimes when you do those equipment things, it's another way to pay for it, that if we need a dump truck or we need something like that, that we borrow for it. And I'll bring you, like, we have the number, like, we're nowhere close to where we should ever be, like, at a high limit. We're nowhere close to that. So because road use was gonna pay that $40,000 debt on the sweeper, if you did transfer it into this borrowing and put it into debt, and it would cost a couple pennies on the debt levy, then that would open up that $40,000 to be saved towards what the guys think needs to be next, is replacing our oldest dump truck and having a plow on it. I think the mayor knows that we need to have at least one truck with a wing. We have none with a wing. You know, it's got the second plow on the side, and that would help us on our bigger. So things like that. So that's kind of my goal for you for the next meeting, is I'm trying to find ways to manage it which interest is a big deal. That obviously is not anything you're deciding, it's just happening. Utilizing those 3 tax levies that we have the ability to. And, you know, also because the rollback is going down, that's the number that I want to find out for sure what the residential rollback is. And we're still getting that money. Remember when they took some of that commercial money away? We still have a fairly significant number in that. There's like 57,000 for that. Some of the other changes to the negative are we're no longer getting our cable franchise money. I believe that was because the TV cable for Chad,
done.
because there's no more Cascade Communications. They were always expected to pay a cable franchise fee. So if you look at the second chunk, second to the last line item on the first page, you'll see cable franchise fees. Second chunk, second to the bottom of that chunk. Are you looking up high enough, Chad?
Yeah.
So cable franchise, go over. You can see we budgeted 20. It was about half the year, so we'll be done. I don't know if we'll get one more month. I don't know if they paid us for December yet. And then that goes down to 0. Obviously, then the other sidebar is no more public access, so that was a bit of a savings, of course, but then there's the paying for our portion of Sean, so we've also got like the chamber's money in here that was decided after this last budget was approved. So some of the like alterations are the no cable franchise, adding chamber money for Sean, obviously adding Sean. Insurance, they're estimating some decent increase for all those liability things, so that's kind of my goal for you, is to try and make it a reasonable tax rate increase. But that's kind of where the law leaves us, is that 786, but it does allow us to capture paying for people's benefits on those other line items and the insurance, so. If anybody has any questions, I know it's a long night, so I want to get out of here, and then we'll plan on putting this on the agenda again for next time. If anybody wants to come in and talk to me in between, and then I'll bring you a new copy of this, make a couple of those changes with the department heads. I'd say we wait until probably March for personnel to get together, kind of get through the next meeting and make sure we know kind of where numbers are at, and then we can meet with personnel to talk about wages. Chad, if you want to go over it more, you can come in and chat about it, just to kind of help you understand where things are at.
Okay.
Sound good?
It's super exciting, Chad.
Don't you talk like that, Megan.
And I'll be honest with you, I've been on council, a little over 6 years now, and
You're just beginning to.
yeah, just beginning to understand it.
And like the stuff that I don't have in here yet is like our street stuff for the highway isn't in there, the library stuff. Like I gotta try and figure out what's gonna be done by this year and next year, and so we'll get on that. Sound good?
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Fred, anything?
Yeah, actually,
Yeah, sorry.
it's Riley's fault. No. Riley just kind of had asked me if I would talk about some of the training that I went to last month. The emergency response team out of Jones and Delaware County, we're now up to about 15 members, and between Jones, Delaware County, Cascade, Monticello, and Anamosa. Usually once a year we try to do a 2 to 2.5, maybe a 3-day training. One of our guys, or one of our members of our team, somehow found out that we could possibly get a hold of Vortex Optics in Barneveld, Wisconsin. And they actually do a 2-day training for tactical officers, emergency response team on room clearing, movement. And yeah, we got up there. The nice thing about this whole thing, I guess, is Vortex Optics paid for 100% of the training, about a $2,000 training.
Wow.
Huh.
So it was very nice of them. We had 4 instructors. JCERT paid for our hotel rooms. With the 4 instructors we had, the first guy introduced himself. He was an Iowa County deputy from around Dodgeville area. He introduced himself as the interpreter for our other instructors. And our other 3 instructors were retired military. Introduced themselves. The first 2 guys, the one said he worked kind of with special forces, did spec ops things. Big guy, big bushy beard, would not want to meet him in a dark alley anywhere. The second guy was actually the Vortex rep. He was retired military, kind of the same thing, had worked with SEAL teams and Green Berets. The third military guy got up, and I mean, he had arms on him bigger than my head, introduced himself, and I learned everything I know from YouTube. And we're like, yeah, right. Well, we started going over a few things. They took us to an active area. It's not a live shoot house, but they pull a pin, you can move a wall. They had foam furniture, you can move things around. Shut the lights off, everything's completely dark, you have to use flashlights. Doing room clearing in, I think the way they had it set up, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There was 5 rooms on one side, a T intersection, and 3 or 4 rooms on the other side. And to move, showing us how to move, using different techniques, using 4-man teams. They started teaching us, we all left at noon for lunch and came back and went back, they taught us more stuff. And one of the instructors, we did a debriefing at the end of the first day and kind of told him I'd been doing, there was 2 of us on Jones County's original emergency response team that started with it. So we've been doing it for at least 15 years, and I've been doing stuff like this over in southwestern Wisconsin for a number of years before I came to Iowa. Everything that they were teaching us were new techniques. We were having muscle memory, and we were doing things our old way, and it was just going to take us a long time to learn this. The one guy that said he learned everything from YouTube, we found out he was a Green Beret instructor and had done a bunch of stuff he wouldn't talk about and had actually worked with SEAL teams. So I mean, we had some these guys knew what they were doing. We got back, a couple of us got back to the room the end of the very first day, kind of got talking, and one guy said, "What do you think?" We know this stuff, we just have to figure it out. Yeah, he said, "I feel like I flunked kindergarten today." And we went back in the next day, found out the course that they were teaching us over the 2 days was actually a 9-week course. So they taught us in the morning. By afternoon, we were actually starting to figure it out. And at the end of the day, we asked our 4 instructors, I mean, they actually, the way this thing was set up, there was a catwalk up there. So we went up there and we were watching them doing what we were doing all day. Got 2 of the instructors that messed up. It's like, you told us not to do that, wait a minute. So, I mean, it just the phenomenal training that we were given. We were given that opportunity. Usually once a year with JCERT, we have a day where we invite other agencies to come in. And with these room clearing techniques that we learned, we have a meeting tomorrow over in Monticello. We're actually going to start putting together a program that we can start teaching some of our local agencies what we learned. So we're going to pass that training on. And these guys, like I said, Vortex paid 100% of the training. The week after we were up there, 2 or 3 of the guys were flying to Texas. Vortex was paying for everything for those guys to go down there. And then they talked about going to Connecticut too after that. So just fantastic training. And I came home, I talked to my wife for an hour and a half about training. I didn't realize I should probably go hop in the shower. Yeah. So I talked to Brad about it a little bit, and I had mentioned it to Riley, and yeah, but it was very good training. It's something that we can bring back, and it's definitely going to benefit us. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cool.
Really fast. You guys already knew about the trailer that the guys made, so I want to thank them for building that and taking that.
That looks good.
Yep. We're advertising for pool hiring if anybody. Davis is returning as the manager, so that position is full. We're not going to advertise for it. But anybody that's interested in lifeguards or concession stands, the deadline is the end of February, and we'll be interviewing Easter weekend, I believe. The pre-construction meeting for the library is next week, Tuesday. So we're marching along on that. I think we had one bill on there for, did we add that bill for
First
the
payout.
billboard? Do I need to have them on? Can you get that in a moment? I gave it to you. What do you mean? I didn't send it to them. Do we have the amount? No. All right. And then I want to thank Dubuque County. I know that you all got the email, but We have the $200,000 loan that we are getting from Dubuque County towards the library. And whatever interest rates, I think we're planning at getting like 4%, and we will be getting that loan at 1%. There was a conversation at first about it being 2%. And the motion from the county board was to make it 1%, so we'll be working on that. And I just remembered that we were gonna add a bill to your bill list. Somehow it got missed. It's the billboard, so we are paying for Big River to have put up the billboard, and then we're invoicing it out to the EDC. They're paying for it, but by us, since it's ours, we were tax exempt. So I either need to give you the exact amount by quick looking at it here, or if you are willing to make a motion to add that to the bill list, and that's all I have.
I'll make a motion to add it to the bill list.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll send you out the amount when I look it up. Thank you. That's all I have.
And public comment, you have a limit of 3 minutes per person, only items on this agenda.
Anyone?
I have one thing.
Just one?
Okay, the alley, if you, between First and, or between Third and Fourth Avenue, between Monroe and Madison Street, there's another alley that comes out onto Madison, and it has like trees all the way along the side. So that could be another,
So I know that there's one that's owned by someone that I know. They have a huge line of arborvitaes that goes to the corner, but I think that's on Adams. So I don't, you didn't say Adams, you said
no,
Monroe.
I'm like
Monroe to
Third,
Madison?
between Madison and Monroe, and then it's between Third and Fourth.
Yeah.
It's like where I grew up at.
Again, that's why I was asking for help with getting the stuff together. But this one is arborvitaes, and we had a conversation about that person needing to also trim them, and they were willing to, so. Okay.
I have one thing too, just a big congrats to Brock Morris. He's wrestling down at the state tournament starting Wednesday at 6. So
Thanks.
you're representing Cascade?
If there's nothing else for the betterment of the community, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
That didn't take long.